Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special meeting of Fernie City Council held on August 19th, 2025. Kiisiukukit, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleat and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. So I'm grateful for everyone's attendance this evening, and I do want to go over some housekeeping matters because we're not used to groups of this size, and likely should have done this last week, so my apologies for that. But the capacity of this room is 80 people, and we have set up a live stream in the side room for those people who were over capacity, so if anybody missed that on their way in. We kindly ask that all doorways are kept clear in the event of an emergency. Kindly use the two exits either here or there. There are two exits in the back as well. Our muster point is the parking lot at the back of the old Brown's Meat Market building adjacent, which I think everybody knows where that is. Washrooms are, of course, located through those doors. We have taken up all the seats, so I won't speak to that. We do ask that everyone present this evening avoid interrupting and refrain from talking with other attendees, council members, or city staff. If you're speaking in the public participation period, kindly ensure that your name is on the sign-up sheet. And if a member of the public is speaking, we ask that we ask that you respect the person speaking and the person speaking speaks respectfully to staff, council members, and the public. Keep discussion relevant to the agenda and refrain from personal attacks or inflammatory language. And me, the presiding chair, has the authority to remove disruptive members of the public from this facility. And before I convene the meeting, I did want to add some notes of my own. First, I am disturbed by the number of people in their correspondence to council who have indicated they will not attend or speak at these public meetings on the fire hall issue because of the atmosphere that's been created in this chamber. I take responsibility for that. Your passion is laudable, but your tactics are counterproductive. I will be removing people this evening if I feel they're unduly disruptive. Second, and I find this somewhat more disturbing, are those who have indicated they won't speak because they fear reprisals on social media. If your intention is to silence your opposition, you may feel you have done so in the public sphere. But remember, and this is per my challenge last week when I suggested, if you think this is easy, run for office. If any of you are seeking public office, this will haunt you to your detriment. Second, before anyone starts a false narrative, the RCMP will be joining us this evening. They're here from the Committee of the Whole. If anybody had taken time to read that agenda, they'll know they're here for their quarterly update. There are some amongst us that might choose this to bend this to their ends. Finally, there is a persistent rumor. Actually, I'll call it a lie, a falsehood, being propagated online that my wife and I are leaving Fernie at the end of my term. This falsehood is being used to undermine my commitment to Fernie and is just that, entirely false. I grew up here. Sylvia and I love Fernie and are committed to this town. And whatever the result of future elections, I am not going anywhere. I bring this up because my mother was asked by someone who appears to get all their information from Facebook. She was asked where Sylvia and I were going, and she asked me in turn with no small sense of worry. My mother is 83. Suffice it to say, your political tactics have really real world and very hurtful impacts. So I will leave it at that. And I will call this meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. Please, Mr. Okay, thank you. It is working? Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation, that the agenda of the August 19th, 2025 special council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. A speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to state their full name and community of residence. And we'll begin with those in attendance, and I'll turn to our corporate officer.
Your Worship, our first speaker this evening is Valerie Decia. Good evening, everybody. My name is Val Desire, longtime resident of Fernie, 1981. I'm speaking tonight in regards to the legality of keeping the Prentice Park on the docket for grants, borrowing, whatever. As George Wilson explained, very well worded at the last meeting, Wilson family, Bill Wilson was the originator, Prentice family are against this usage of the Prentice Park, and Shell Process Resources is not going to approve that either. So instead of wasting more of the public's time and your time and sentiment, why don't you seriously consider a different option for legal borrowing, legal granting, and get the show on the road so that our firefighters can finally get a place to work out of, because they are important too. And I'd like to see this happen before your term is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Desire. I said it last week, I'll say it again. Could you please refrain from clapping? This is what creates a hostile environment. Nobody will speak in favor as a result. Thank you.
Next speaker is Kim Lancaster.
Sorry, Council. Hi, my name is Kim Lancaster. I live at 22 Ridgemont Avenue, and I was born and raised in Fernie, and I'm very concerned on how the perception is people that want to have the fire hall at the Prentice Park. Yes, our firemen need a proper home. Nobody has ever disputed that. We dispute the Prentice Park area. They're saying that at one time that Prentice Park land could be contaminated. Well, the SIS building was there. The high school had a bunch of classes running out there. There was glance classes. There was band practices there. The Gilmores had their did their band socials there and then went out to the public, which they were very good at that time. The Gallimores are the ones that had storage for their furniture and ran their store there off there. When the field behind the old high school was unavailable anymore, the baseball field, that's when they moved to the 902 area for their sports field. So to me, the land is not contaminated over these years. I am very upset that people are saying that they can't come here and feel ready to speak out in the public about this for or for against it. Yes, I was terrified to come here tonight. I have been threatened in public. I have to go out with somebody with me at all times now because I was told possibly the fire department might not come and if I have a house fire, might not come and put my house out. I have been scared. I had to bring somebody with me to make sure that I wasn't verbally attacked. I was raised there. We did walkathons. My father and numerous dads put money in towards that community center. Fernie is not just a place to become a Canmore or her Banff. We are Fernie. We love it here. That's why we stay here. And for people to come around and say, oh, renters don't pay taxes. Yes, they do. They may not be able to afford our $1.5 million, $2 million homes, but they should be not criticized. There's people here that hurt other people. Yes. I have asked for a request from city staff for information. Not once in the 5 years that I have asked for anything on between electric vehicles to the new fire truck to the new fire hall, I have not been once given that credit. That announcement, they got my phone number, they have my email, they have my house phone number. I have not moved from 22 in over 40 years. I would like that same courtesy. You wanted it in writing? I gave it to you in writing. I've come to the crumb and I have been very pleasant. I have not ever been rude to the staff. I have been very accommodating. I am asking all city staff, including our council members, please consider 902 or some other area for our poor firemen. They need a good spot, not to be in an overcrowded area that if somebody is going to get hurt. Is that the problem? Or a flight exam for air station?
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. Thanks very much.
Your Worship, our next speaker is Dan Cox.
My name is Dan Cox. I live here in Fernie at the corner of, I got to think what it is here now, 9th Avenue and 3rd Avenue and 9th Street, which by the way is 1 block away from the old fire station. And I've never been bothered by any of the noise or anything that is involved with running the local station. In saying that, I'm proud that my son came 2 weeks ago and as president of the junior baseball team and told you that he didn't want Prentice Park tore up. And I'm not reiterating that because I think if other people will speak tonight, it will be quite obvious that the community does not want that to happen. Guys, I'm referring, I was a former councilor, by the way. I served 7 years. And I'm reading, my notes are from a January 23rd, 2024 council meeting. It's a technical report on the Red Apple site, which I believe on the highway is the proper place to put our fire hall. And I'm just going to read some notes and pick apart the discussion that was there at the time. There are some video, whatever they're called, short forms that I don't understand that staffs will be able to pick apart my argument with, I'm sure. But the site that is required according to the developer, the committee, whatever the firm was that did the assessment, I guess is what it's called, was 1.5 acres. The Red Apple site is 0.8 of an acre. And in conversations in the community, I have heard Richie Bahama say that Originally, he even talked to some staff or some residents of Fernie about doing a public-private partnership on that site for the hall, but it never seemed to get anywhere. And the report that I'm referring to refers to the use of the land, and the first one of the 1.5 acres is 0.35 of an acre for the building itself. And that includes admin, living quarters, separate apparatus, truck bays, and everything. The second part of it is 0.7 of an acre. Half of the site is allocated for 30 private parking stalls, 10 public stalls, drive aisles, when the actual number of firefighters that we have, including the 30 on-call.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. But I appreciate your input. The Arcadis report is attached to the meeting agenda if folks want to refer to that. Thank you. Councillor Ramadas?
Sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just want to motion a couple more minutes for Mr. Cox if you guys are okay with it.
I would second that. I think he was going somewhere.
Well, discussion? Councillor McCusick.
Thank you, Worship. I would say if we're going to do that, then everyone gets the same amount of time. It's the only way to be fair. We start
Yeah.
over again at the beginning. Everybody gets more time. Like, we can't just pick and choose from people that we want to hear from the amount of time they get. Everybody gets a fair amount of time. That's how it works here.
I agree. And we got a number of speakers this evening that we need to get through. Mr. Cox did present this information at the January 23rd, 2024 site selection meeting. So if folks want to go back to that, it's on the City of Fernie YouTube channel, and it's now quite a bit easier to find the meeting because it actually has the meeting date versus X number of weeks ago it was posted, which used to be at Facebook. So I apologize, Mr. Cox. We did run out of time, but folks want to go back. But we do have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed?
Thank you, Your Worship. Our next speaker is Joe Wachowski. My apologies for the pronunciation.
Thank you. My name is Joe Warshawski, 1122 9th Avenue. I'm opposed to the Prentice Park location because I see it as a gift and it's part of our heritage and the things that we've been gifted throughout the years. We can't keep giving gifts away because who wants to give us any more once this happens? My vision is once this park is removed from that parcel of land, that whole parcel of land, which is very easy to develop, and all the infrastructures in place will become a fire sale, and we're going to lose that recreation, and you have nowhere to put the following people now. 902 is a better site. The highway would be better because 96% of your work is highway. It's not fires. It's not anything else. A little bit of education, but the majority of your work is dispatched to the roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warshawski.
Our next speaker is March Ungaro.
I'm sorry, Ms. Angaro, just a reminder for folks, this is our time clock, so you have your 3 minutes there. Hopefully you can see that from there.
Oh, yeah, okay. March and Garrow, Fernie, BC, 701 11th Avenue. I've grown up here, for anyone who was not at the last meeting I spoke at. And first of all, I want to say I appreciate all the work that's involved in this dilemma, which all of a sudden, fire hall was decommissioned. Okay, we got to do this, got to do that. Now we're 2-3 years down the road. It's caused a lot of stress in our communication online, offline, with family, with new people. And some nasty things are said. But please don't refer people that care either as a mob. We're not a mob. We just want what's best for our children and the community. There's been some hateful things said. Now, we don't normally speak, but I'm going to hurry this up. Of course, we have other lives and duties and whatever. I went through the Acadia's report really quickly. Page 10, 3.0E. The subject property needs to be free of encumbrances. I think we've lost there. F, prioritizes best possible response time. If you drive up, there's a straight down the road. We've got a mess of people hitting that light. Firemen could probably control that light on their call outs and put it red and go this way or that way. They're not encumbering the children of the school and the hospital and all that area. It's already bungled up. The open house they had, 902 second, not favored because of schools and recreational land. Online survey, strong opposition on Prentice Park. Site 2. And I got 30 seconds. We all want to get through this. We've wasted lots of time, lots of money, lots of passion. I suggest put it at 902. That has to be assessed also, that site, if you want to sell it for $1 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angaro.
Our next speaker is Darren Wright.
Hello, my name is Darren Wright. I've lived in Fernie since 1976. I graduated with the mayor. And Sharon over there, we all graduated together. I didn't choose to speak at the last meeting. And it's interesting what's going on after the last meeting. As Councillor brought up the community center, and we were told it's not nearly large enough. And I looked at that building over the last week, and that's a pretty big building, and I think you could get quite a few fire trucks in there if that was the lot to go to. I've heard lots of stories about people wanting this fire hall to be their legacy and stuff like that. Well, Prentice Park is the legacy in itself. And rec land disappears in this town and never comes back. That's what I've seen over my lifetime. The hall, the lot next to the Red Apple. If the building fits there, like where we're putting it in Prentice Park, we're saying because we want future building to make it bigger, to add the RCMP, add the ambulance. Instead of looking into where's the place we can put a fire hall. And that's what we need, a fire hall. We don't need to take away from recreation. It's, you know, we're called an unruly mob. Stuff was said that shouldn't have been said. But to call it an unruly mob, not close. You look around the world, unruly mobs do a lot of things, and not what happened here. Myself, never should have been looked at, Prentice Park. It's a land for recreation. Myself, I don't understand how we got down to this. And we've had lots offered to the city at no pay, and we turned it down. I just don't understand what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Chris Inglis.
Mayor, I asked you before you start that clock, I actually have a couple housekeeping rules myself. Can you please ask the?
Sorry, that's not your role here, Mr.
I didn't ask if it was, but some of the stuff was muted on the last meeting that was broadcasted, which I don't think the citizens of Fernie appreciated. And some of the volumes were turned down for some of the speakers.
Councillor Odia Kelly.
A point of order, your worship. I believe
Can you
that,
please stop the
I
clock?
believe the ground rules were clearly outlined.
I think you're absolutely right.
And
Um,
I would like to add, I'm not a technical expert, but I would like to add that I had difficulty hearing because of background noise, and I suspect it was worse online, your worship.
I think that's probably fair. The background noise causes the microphones to cut out. We experienced that from the very beginning of this setup. And so please continue, Mr. Inglis. You have
Yes, and I have my clock started because my time was taken up by somebody else speaking.
No, you've been speaking, Mr. Inglis. You have exactly what's left on the clock.
So I have a letter I've shared with the gallery. First of all, good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and gallery. I have a letter that I shared with the gallery at 5 o'clock today from Shell Canada. Shell Canada will not, their exact words is, Shell Canada will not be intervening in this procedure, meaning they will not endorse the covenant, they will not remove the covenant. So that is from Shell Canada. Everybody has a copy. You also will have a copy on your desk before I leave today. So take that into consideration. Yes, we do need a new fire hall. It's just not at Prentice Park. And also too, I'd like to remind you, I've been selling corn down at 7-Eleven since 2017. And you know what? The biggest thing that come up about that site at one of the meetings was the power. Well, you know what? There's so many things online that BC Hydro has become a community partnership with the community to relocate the power, to put it underground or whatever. I don't think any of those options were explored. And also too, the ball diamonds for the kids, you know, it's not safe to say you're going to build out there at the site. Patrick Swartley said that there is methane gas coming out of there. So that looks like another movie we can start with Julia Roberts and Aaron Brockovich. My last minute here, Mayor, I got something I would like to read. And it goes something like this. At this time, it is my belief, Mayor Nick Milligan, I think you should immediately resign your position as mayor for the city of Fernie due to the divided community that you have created in the last almost 3 years of being in office. Not tomorrow, not next week, but tonight. I urge you to put in your resignation so this community can work together and not be divided and move forward and onward with a new leader and build a new fire hall in the right location. We need somebody to be a mayor of Fernie and to listen to the people of Fernie and to keep their campaign promises, not to make them broken promises when elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. I'll turn to Ms. Rhodes, or who am I turning to for online? Sorry.
I will get Ms. Rhodes to promote Anthony and Anselmo.
Welcome, Mr. Anselmo.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Milligan, City Council, city staff, and members of the public, both in attendance and online. My name is Anthony Anselmo. I reside at 20 Mount Trinity Ave, Fernie. Tonight, there is a growing, massive amount of supporters are asking you to finally save Prentice Park. We are calling on the City Council to pass a resolution removing Prentice Park from consideration as a fire hall site, or to hold a referendum for the citizens to choose yes or no on using Prentice Park as the fire hall location. The site selection process began in 2023 with opportunities for public feedback. According to the Arcadis technical report, only 80 citizens attended the October 26th, 2023 open house. Feedback from that session showed attendees preferred the central location of 902 2nd Ave, which would not interfere with schools or recreational land. Concerns about Prentice Park included losing a ball diamond and its perceived lack of centrality. The parallel online survey completed by 460 people showed strong support for a new fire hall, but also a clear preference for exploring other locations over either Prentice Park or 902 2nd Ave. Community members preferred not to construct the fire hall at Prentice Park. It's important to note that Prentice Park never had a fair chance to be saved in this process. The Arcadis study was conducted purely from a technical standpoint, including the option of co-users of the space. Of course, from a pure technical perspective, Prentice Park scored well, but cultural, spiritual, social, and community connection values were never measured. Public concern about Prentice Park focused on the loss of recreational space, negative impacts on community events, increased traffic congestion, and disruption to school activities. Opposition to Prentice Park was overwhelming at town halls, open houses, and official public participation periods. Yet, since 2023, Council has disregarded this opposition. The referendum, our last avenue to protect Prentice Park, was eliminated on July 15th. Even though the referendum was on the financial aspect of the fire hall, citizens were going to use it to stop the project dead in its tracks because
Thank you,
of the
Mr.
destruction
Anselmo.
of Prentice
Thank
Park.
you. That's your 3 minutes. Appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elena Anselmo.
Welcome. We can see you.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. My name is good evening, Mayor Milligan, City Council, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Elena Anselmo. I'm speaking on behalf of the same 1,600 citizens who want to save Prentice Park. Mayor Milligan, at the December 14th, 2023 Town Hall, you told residents that support from both the Prentice family and Shell Canada would be required before considering Prentice Park for the fire hall. We now have written opposition from the Prentice family, the Wilson family, and others who were instrumental in creating the park's legal protections. You also said building a fire hall adjacent to a hospital is probably not a good plan. Whether it's a few meters or a few hundred meters, the proposed fire hall on Prentice Park is still adjacent to the hospital. Your own words tell us that is not a good plan. Councillor Nixon, on January 23rd, 2024, you said one of the sites was Rotary Park, which was quite shocking to me that we would tear down a park to put a fire hall in. What is the difference? Why is it shocking to tear down Rotary Park, but not shocking to tear down legally protected Prentice Park, safeguarded by a covenant with Shell? And just last week, you called our supporters an angry mob. Do you stand by that comment and call the family members who made passionate and difficult speeches about preserving Prentice Park angry mobsters? We call them passionate community members. Councillor Ramadas, although you may have supported Prentice Park early in the process, you have now met hundreds of concerned citizens, have a deep understanding of what the space means to our community. You also did not support removing the referendum. Tonight, the community will look to you to protect the park's intended use. Councillor McIsaac, on January 23rd, you stated that Prentice Park was not your favorite location until the technical report came out. Perhaps that report clouded your judgment about the cultural, spiritual, social, and community value of Prentice Park. From your purely technical standpoint, Cervello Field may appear right, but from a community standpoint, it's a wrong choice. Tonight, 1,600 plus supporters are asking you to show courage and save Prentice Park. Councillor Audie Kelly, as someone with a deep personal connection to Prentice Park, you know its history and significance. The founders intended it to remain a recreational hub for generations with a legally registered right of reverter on the title. The community will be looking to you stand firm in protecting this legacy. Councillor Hamilton, on July 23rd, 2024, you said that once Parkland is gone, it's gone forever, and that the city has an obligation to protect it. You voted against using Prentice Park for the fire hall. Supporters are looking for you to show the same conviction tonight. Councillor Shoesmith, you have said the city has a history of not honoring past agreements. Removing Cervello Field from its legally protected park status proves your point. You are not in favor of using Prentice Park for the fire hall and have a personal connection to the green space. Tonight, supporters will be looking for you to continue standing with them. This community will be watching closely to see if council will remove Prentice Park from the fire hall or commit to holding a referendum. It's time to honor our community's heritage and keep Prentice Park as it was intended. I'm sorry for the speedy speech, but 3 minutes is not a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anselmo.
Your worship, our next speaker is Josh Gorlick.
What do I do?
Just swipe out now, go to YouTube.
Okay.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can hear and see you, Mr. Garlick. Thanks.
Perfect. Josh Garlick, resident of Fernie. Hi, everybody. I don't want to use my 3 minutes to reiterate what everybody else is saying. I think there's been some really great comments tonight. Congratulations to everybody for standing up. I just want to make it really clear, and I hope everybody in this room and who's listening understands just how much of a problem this division of town is being here. If you guys look at the YouTube video from last week, there was 2,200 people that watched it in a week. Compare that to every other video on your website, there's like 30 or 40 views. So it's obvious this is a hot topic here. Everybody's talking about it. And the kitchen tables that I talk to, I don't know a whole lot of them who are pro for the idea of using this park for all the other reasons that we said. Now, one of the real big problems is since in the last week when I was talking to you guys, one of your council members went on social media and called us an angry mob. And below that, the comments called us a bunch of rednecks. It got personal. You guys are kicking the hornet's nest here, and the town is finally standing up. And I think what you're seeing here, you keep saying, oh, you had time a couple of years ago. You guys could have stood up and said something. We did. Some of us did. Maybe not a whole lot, but I honestly believe that was because nobody thought that anybody would actually build a park on Prentice, a fire hall. The idea is really just so ridiculous. I think most people, we got to the finish line here, and it's just like, wait, they're actually going to do this? You're actually going to build a fire hall on a park? I think people are really upset about it. And to call us an angry mob and kick the hornet's nest, like, I think if any one of you councillors wants to play politics in the future and future elections, you guys got to listen to us right now. And you know what, Milligan, I agree with what you say. This has got to be a harsh job. Like, you guys get paid 20 grand a year, 30 grand, nothing. You barely even make a car payment to stick your necks out and hear all this people talk all this crap behind your back and in front of you. I really do feel sorry for you. And I do understand. I think I understand how hard your job actually is, but make it easy and just go for a referendum. Put your hands in the air and say, okay, let's have a referendum. Stop calling every time somebody cheers and claps. That's not an angry mob. That's exactly what Elena said. That's just a passionate group of people. I really appreciate everybody here tonight. I hope you guys just make it easy on everybody here and just go for a referendum, see what happens. But thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, Mr. Garlick.
Your Worship, I'm just going to ask the Acting Director of Corporate Services to see if there was anyone else that wanted to sign up and talk. No, I think that's it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your passion. I've said it before. I very much appreciate how much people care. I very much appreciate how this has gone this evening. Thank you for listening at the outset. And maybe at last week when I was quite passionate myself about how challenging this can be. So thank you for that. With that, we will move on to a report on the fire hall site and project budget information that we asked for last week from our acting chief administrative officer, Mr. Burdett.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Hello, council, members of the public. I do have Ms. Weir, our Director of Engineering and Public Works, and Fire Chief Morgan on the call. They're both out of town on vacation, but they called in tonight to help answer any additional questions. Tonight, I am presenting a recap on the fire hall project so far and some additional information as directed by council at last week's council meeting. As a reminder, council last week passed the resolution that we set up tonight's meeting, and with some additional research into questions asked by council. Questions included how the site was selected, cost and timeline of site work already completed at Prentice Park to be completed at 902 2nd Ave, the impacts of switching to 902 2nd Ave on our grant application, the taxation impact of all the above, logistics of holding a referendum on site selection, not borrowing, and finally, current details and timeframe for the temporary conditional building permit at the temporary fire hall location on Railway Avenue at the operations facility. So first, I would like to briefly summarize the site selection process and related council decision. In 2023, the city initiated a comprehensive needs assessment and site selection process. For community engagement, we formed a community working group, or CWG, which was made up of a diverse group of Fernie citizens. 9 community members from various backgrounds collaborated with the project team in advancing the site selection process, engaging in regular sessions since September 2023. We had an online survey and created an information portal. And as already mentioned tonight, council hosted an open house where people could submit feedback. In terms of how we arrived at these 2 sites, we needed parcels of land that were 1.5 acres in size, outside the floodplain, on the west side of the tracks, as 80% of the properties are on the west side of the tracks, and sites that prioritize the best possible response times. We needed all of these criteria to accommodate for the current department's needs, the National Fire Protection Association, the NFPA, and the Fire Underwriter Surveys, or FUS's, requirements, and future growth needs of the community and the department. We also issued requests for a formal expression of interest to identify site partners and/or co-uses, which did generate 2 potential sites that were both 1, too small, and 2, increased the project costs because we'd have had to purchase this land. All that considered, in the end, there were only 2 suitable sites for this project, 902 2nd Ave and the location on 1500 5th Ave, which is the South Ball Diamond at Prentice Park. Some advantages of Prentice Park is that it was the bigger of the 2 parcels, which better allowed for future co-use. In other words, co-use that wouldn't have had to have been decided at the onset of the project. It's big enough to be a standalone building during future co-use construction. So any future projects would not impact fire hall operations or the timeline of fire hall construction. Prentice is a more flexible site. It doesn't have to deal with rail setbacks. There's ability for outdoor training space to be incorporated. There's no known site contamination at Prentice Park, and it's closer to the highway. A couple of disadvantages with this site is the loss of one ball diamond. There's a covenant on the title with Shell Canada, proximity to helipad, which was discussed last week. This has been incorporated into the design and does not impact our ability to operate fire hall on this site. Some advantages of 902 is obviously there is no ball diamond there to lose. Response time is good, size is good. It's on the side of the track where, again, 80% of the properties are, which I should clarify is not to say by any means that the 20% are less important, but it is a consideration for our one fire hall. Disadvantages is that it's not big enough for co-use. Because of the tracks there, the setback is much larger from that side of the property. So there's no room to build anything else in the future unless you build up, which is significantly more expensive. A sizable percentage of calls from that location would require firefighters to drive through downtown, which is full of parked cars and pedestrians. There is potential contaminants from the train tracks, and therefore remediation would be required. This is a bit of an unknown, as we haven't done environmental site assessments on this site, but we do know that a neighboring property did require remediation before construction could commence on that project. We do know there's a likelihood of soil and or groundwater contamination due to previous use of a railway spur on the property. There was 1 meter of fill placed on that site that contained surficial waste, concrete and ash material, which would likely be discovered during the phase 1 environmental site assessment. There's also a likelihood of barium and tin metals at 2 borehole locations along the edge of the property against the tracks that would need remediation, but would be discovered during a phase 2 environmental site assessment. It's also not typical for municipalities to build protective services buildings in one of the 4 primary areas for hazard interface potential. Those 4 potentials are flood, wildfire, hazmat, by rail and highway, and pandemic. This one obviously would include hazmat by rail. There are mixed loads of hazardous materials on the rail line through Fernie daily, and incidents do and have happened in Canada. And lastly, construction on 902 would remove future commercial development potential on this site, which really is the next most obvious commercial zone in our growing city, therefore limiting where the downtown can grow to in the future, but also limiting commercial tax revenue in the future available to the city. So continuing on site selection, in November 2023, there was a report for council's information updating them on the status of site selection. And then finally, on January 23rd, 2024, council was asked to make a decision on the site for development of a new fire hall. As I've just explained, there are pros and cons to both sites. Council received feedback on both sites, both for and against, which, as I'll talk about more shortly, is still the case. This made it clear that while both sites were suitable, neither was the perfect solution in everyone's eyes. But in the end, council decided to proceed with developing a new fire hall at the Prentice Park location. Since that time, council has received a few presentations on and selected the progressive design build project delivery methodology. A contract was awarded to Chandos to proceed through detailed design using this methodology. The Class C estimate was presented to council on July 8th, which coincidentally was also the time the provincial borrowing regulations happened to change, which was completely out of the blue. It's worth noting that at all of these milestones, council reaffirmed progressing with the site selection of a portion of Prentice Park. And then on July 15th, council gave initial 3 readings of the loan authorization bylaw, which, as I pointed out last week, was always the target timeline for this bylaw, regardless if we were having a referendum or not. And then last week, council gave direction to bring back this report exploring the implications of switching sites to 902 Second Ave. So before I go through these slides, a lot of the numbers and facts on these slides were said last week, but again, the focus here was on trying to analyze the implications of these facts. So some site due diligence work that's already been performed at Prentice Park needs to be performed at 902, excuse me. There is an old geotechnical report from 2012 on 902 that would have to be reviewed and updated. There would need to be a phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment. We would have to amend our detailed design contract with Chandos. These 3 items would be an additional roughly $207,000 and a 4-month delay. The 4-month delay would mean construction likely wouldn't start until fall of 2026. And therefore, the operational fire hall would likely be pushed to 2028 instead of one of our main objectives was having one in 2027. Also worth noting would be the impact on other critical projects that would also suffer a delay, like our wastewater treatment, CNL right-of-way, and so on. A couple of project costs related effects that are a bit concerning here and are currently an unknown in terms of quantifying a number is that with construction beginning in the fall, winter construction can be more expensive. Also, the results of the environmental site assessments phases 1 and 2 may result in additional remediation work that needs to be done at the site, as I've already talked about. Again, we don't know if there are contaminants for sure at this site, but we do know about that neighboring property. So we do think it's likely the project budget will increase because of this. Furthermore, there was discussion last week about Class B versus Class D estimates. Staff does think it could apply for the SPF grant for Site 902 using a Class B estimate, but the contingency amount would have to be higher. Currently, with the stage we're at Prentice Park, we have a 15% contingency built in, which is quite standard for a Class B estimate. At 902, we would need that contingency to be up to 25%, which increases the project budget by an additional $1.4 million. Both of these facts combined, the initial site work not being complete and the higher level of contingency, are very likely to be understood by the grantors, who would then view this project as a riskier investment. At the seminar I went to in May that the grantors put on, they made it very clear that they don't like awarding money to projects that are unlikely to be successful. Which leads me to emphasize that this grant is important. It's the one major funding opportunity for municipalities to deliver major capital projects, and it's only available every 2 to 3 years. You can see the difference between securing and not securing this grant. It's a 4% tax increase. And in the time that's passed since COVID, we've had 5 years now of medium-sized property tax increases. Both staff and council are aware of the burden this places on the taxpayers in our community. And in the same vein as household expenses, I also want to bring up another unknown, which has been discussed previously with council. The longer that we're in a temporary fire hall spot, the greater the risks of homeowners' insurance premiums increasing because of non-compliance with certain regulations, which I'll get into on the next slide. And if that were to happen, they would likely increase by significantly more than the cost of a 2 or 6% tax increase. Council asked last week on the timeline of our conditional building permit, and quite frankly, we're currently in non-compliance with what BC Building Code says should be a building for use of a fire hall. And there remains a risk of repercussions from continued non-compliance regulatory requirements from the BC Building Code, the NFPA, and the FUS. And finally, I was hesitant to share this number because it really is an estimate, but our minimum estimates for upgrades to the current temporary facility are in the ballpark of $1.5 to $3 million to upgrade that facility to post-disaster standard. That's minimum, and that's just an estimate. And then we're still left with a building that doesn't meet functional requirements, continues to compromise response times and community safety, and is still just a temporary solution over at the operations facility. Council asked if it was possible to have a referendum on site selection, and it is possible to have a referendum to seek approval on a matter of public interest and not just whether to borrow money or not. Staff estimates roughly, the question does need to be formed as a yes or no question, so it would have to be, do you want to fire hall at Prentice site? Excuse me, you could also ask a second question, do you want to fire hall at 902? Staff estimates roughly a $20,000 budget and a process that would take another 3 to 4 months on top of the 4 months for additional site work referenced earlier if both were to happen. This also means if progression on the project were to halt until then, this would completely eliminate our chances at a successful SPF grant application. So one way to look at this is that it could cost $7,020,000. We did receive public feedback from several groups since the August 12th meeting. The community working group, which I described earlier as the diverse group of citizens that was selected purely for this project, is in broad continued support of the project trajectory so far. Some general comments from that group is that while there's concern about extra time spent on answering site questions, they are supportive of pursuing the SPF grant, understanding that it eliminates the potential for a referendum on borrowing or site. Another general comment is that the contingent of people against Prentice Park was known back in January 2024 when the original decision was made, and that this is not new information about a better site. A reminder that the Prentice Park site was recommended by staff, consultants, and the Committee of Diverse Citizens, and then of course Council discussed and voted on this site. We also received a letter from the Board of the Chamber of Commerce in support of continuing the project at Prentice Park and against the site at 902, citing its view that 902 is a critical property for the expansion of the downtown core and an ideal location for mixed-use development. They said the site selection process was thorough and acknowledged that no site is without challenges. Lastly, made note of the substantial financial opportunity that's both rare and time-sensitive. I had a question from the rugby board asking if the existing pavilion, washrooms, and storage sheds were going to be disturbed, and if their field for the 2026 rugby season was at risk of being impacted. The answer back to them was no impact on rugby. They also said they're not against the site, just wanted clarification on those issues. And then we received 7 letters from the general public. 5 were in favor of Prentice Park, 2 were against. And I need to point out here that none of this is through a request for formal engagement process. So it's really not generally considered fair to give more weight to a particular piece of feedback just because someone wrote a letter. The point I'm trying to make is that nothing has changed in terms of public opinion on these sites. We continue to receive feedback from people who favor both sites. That was the case in 2023 through January 2024, and it remains the case now, which is really the only point I'm trying to make with this site, with this slide. And then finally, some points that I'd like to clarify that I've seen floating around the last week. One is that the city.
Sorry, Mr. Burdick. Councilor Ramanus.
Thank you, Worship. I have a question, CFO. There is a referendum and there is something that you refer to here as a non-binding vote. There are 2 different things, aren't there?
Thanks, Councilor Ramadas. That's right. Council can ask for public feedback in an informal manner, which doesn't bind council to the decision. If you hold a referendum, council is binded by that decision. The argument here is that informal feedback was already requested through the site selection process.
Further?
So if you go back to the previous slide, CFO, if you wouldn't mind, where you were talking about referendum. No, the other one. So yeah, that's the one. It is possible to have a referendum to seek approval on a matter of public interest, not just borrowing. You said that is okay. But my ask from the previous meeting was a non-binding vote that is not connected with the application process itself. Now, I want to know if we did go ahead with a non-binding vote, how does that jeopardize your chance with SPF grant? Aren't they separate to each other?
Thanks, Councilor Ramadas. Are you referring to like a survey?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let's call it a vote, where you're actually identifying yourself as a citizen and you're actually putting in a vote for something. We don't know what the question is going to be, yes or no on Prentice, perhaps, but it is an actual vote, is what I'm thinking about. It's not a referendum.
If you're going into a place to vote, I mean, that's what a referendum is. And then there's rules around that. You have to prove that you're a citizen and which is why non-formal feedback exists, because there's no way to prove that people are citizens. And then, the impact, let's say more people wanted 902 and then council voted to switch, the impacts remain as described on the site work that needs to be done and the delay and the extra cost and the grant application that way.
Councillor Audrey Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. If you'd indulge me for a couple questions. I just want to clarify, Councillor Ramadas, I believe you're referring to what's called a non-binding opinion poll. And according to the provincial website, at any time, local governments may initiate a process to understand community opinions on issues and needs using the powers in the Community Charter and Local Government Act. This can be done by voting or any other process that the municipal council or regional district board considers appropriate and can include social media and online community discussion. Is that what you're referring to?
My question was actually, it says section 80, sorry, Your Worship, I didn't ask for your permission here. Section 83 of the Community Charter is what it says. I just want to understand the mechanism. Like, it's okay if you say it is a survey, but in my mind, I was thinking it was an actual ability for citizens to go out, prove their identity, prove their address, and actually vote. And there is a way for us to count the number of yeses and nos.
Well, I think it's already been pointed out, you're describing a referendum, and a referendum, whether binding or otherwise, requires presumably the same amount of setup, the $20,000 budget that you indicated, Mr. Burdett, and the time required to meet any sort of legislative checks and balances of that process.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not prepared to speak to the logistics of setting up an informal vote. Council, and I can't remember if it's section 83, but council can ask for any informal feedback that they want. And I'm not trying to argue that point. I'm just saying in terms of holding a vote, we were beginning the stages of the referendum in July when we didn't need it anymore. So we would have to start that process again if we're going to go down a referendum. Any informal piece of feedback mechanism that council wants, I would need to have that directed very clearly to staff.
Audrey Kelly, did you have a follow-up question?
I did, thanks, Your Worship, on a slightly different tack. Acting CAO Burdett, can you help me out with the deadline to apply for the grant is September 12th. Do they tell us at all when they're going to award the grant?
You're correct. Deadline September 12th, and they said it's typically 6 to 8 months. So we would expect to hear back next summer, May or June.
May or June. And further, Your Worship?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I did read the program guide for applying for the grant. And one of the things I noticed when you're applying, the project cannot have commenced. So my understanding is we haven't commenced the project. We are in the pre-construction phase. After we apply, are we allowed to commence construction, or do we have to wait until they decide about the grant?
It's a good question. Thanks, Councillor Audrey Kelly. Eligible expenses begin from the date of application. So you can start after that. And then once you find out, you can then apply it to expenses in the past.
To get reimbursed for those expenses through the granting process.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Maybe I was not clear, CFO. What I am trying to understand is, use the R word or call it non-binding vote, doesn't matter. Some form of mechanism where people are going and voting, okay? Let's call it the process. Now, my question is, how does the fact that you are choosing this option actually jeopardize your chances of getting an SPF grant? When you're not actually asking for a borrowing limit, you're actually asking for the location. You know what I mean? Like they are two separate things is how I'm thinking in my head. Please clarify if my thinking is incorrect.
Sure. So let's pretend there's two outcomes, one of the two sites. If it's 902, I've already explained how it would jeopardize our chances at the grant with the unknown contingency fund and the site work assessment that needs to be done, both of which the grantors are very likely to understand and will review the project as more risky. If the results are Prentice Park, then it would be, in theory, it wouldn't, noting that September 12th is pretty close, and for staff to arrange some sort of vote where we're checking people's licenses, I don't even know where to start making that useful for council, if you know what I'm trying to say here. And also, we did ask other municipalities about this option, and the response we got back was, this is not typical. This is not best practice for BC municipalities. That was the feedback we got, which I have to now share with you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Please continue with your presentation.
Thank you. So finally, some points that I'd like to clarify that I've seen floating around the last week. One is that the city has disposed of 902 already. This is not true. We actually have very strict legislation that we have to follow when doing a disposition of city property, and absolutely cannot sneak sell properties. I do want to say, though, that 902 has been made available for the construction project at 692 3rd Avenue as part of their traffic plan to use as a laydown yard while they complete that building. The main idea there is reducing the amount of clutter on 7th Street and 3rd Ave during that project. So a switch to 902, we could definitely renege on that use, but then would likely have to help find an alternative solution for that project, likely further away at the city yards. This would not be a large hurdle to holding back a major city project, but worth bringing up. There were some points on congestion in the Prentice Park area by the hospital and school drop-off. I just wanted to make the points that, number one, we did rely on the traffic counts done as part of the active transportation master plan, inferring from those that our roads still have capacity to accommodate more volume, even beyond what was modeled based on projected growth. And number two, traffic generated from the fire hall is quite minimal, therefore not warranting a full traffic impact assessment. Also, the fire hall moving to Prentice Park actually reduces congestion in key areas of the city from our current location. For example, currently just about every call has to blast through the Isabella Dickens school zone. And then with respect to school drop-off, a lot of parents do use that Prentice Park location, but the fire hall project as proposed actually includes a road behind the fire hall site on the south side that leads to the current drop-off location of the pavilion and public washrooms. So those two buildings are still going to be there and parents can still access them for school drop-off. The current road now to the north of the ball field will still be there as well, but that'll be for firefighter and staff access. To finish, the work did last week analyzing the impacts of switching to 902 helped us arrive at the conclusion that switching sites at this stage of the project would significantly jeopardize not only our major funding opportunity, but also the primary objective of an operational fire hall serving the community by 2027. It will increase the uncertainty and therefore the risk of the project, particularly by not having site work completed, which will be transparent and obvious to the grantors. Staff believes that continuing with the prior decision of Prentice Park at this stage in the project gives us the best chance at securing this financial opportunity and therefore delivering a purpose-built fire hall in 2 years for a very reasonable price in today's market. The theme of this presentation, I hope, has come across that 902 was a feasible site for this project, but there were more risks and costs associated with it. And again, that's not to say that 902 wasn't a feasible site. These risks would have been worked on and mitigated, but they would have been built into the project plan as far back as 19 months ago at site selection, so as not to delay the delivery of this project. Now, at this stage, we don't have that time, and the project will be delayed, and our grant application will be significantly weaker, and the firefighters remain currently in a building not suitable for fire service. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Very much appreciated, and input from all the others not least of all, Ms. Weir and Chief Morgan, who are on vacation but are able to join us this evening. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Thanks, everybody, for all the feedback, mails, and the phone calls. There's quite a few, so I didn't get to respond to all of them. So I thought most of the people who reached out will be watching tonight, so I'm just going to kind of blanket respond here. To clarify some things, my intent at our last meeting, was not to drag this out, but to put it to bed one way or the other. Council previously made a decision earlier on, which I disagreed with. I hadn't thought our collective will had changed, but given the discussion at the table, I decided to table my motion pending the staff report. I've not changed my own opinion on any of this one way or another in a long time. I felt almost since the inception of this process that we'd made a few mistakes. My issue wasn't with the CWG or firefighters or even my colleagues on council. My issues with the scope, scale, and site selection. Since the early process, I've been voting against because I felt that we should be considering some different, more out-of-the-box options, perhaps a smaller hall, perhaps keeping some presence at the current location for response on both sides of the tracks, perhaps even some sort of deal with the RDK. I believe since the early days that people should expect and be given a referendum. I have no intention of voting for a 902 site or for the Prentice location, just so that everybody understands my stance on this clearly. Thank you, Mayor Milligan.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from council? Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I've got a clarifying question to Councillor, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, please.
There is a motion on the floor, Councillor, that asks for.
Sorry, just for clarification, it's not currently on the floor at this meeting. We'd have to have a motion to bring that motion back as it was tabled.
It is tabled is what I meant.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure it was clear.
So if I recall it correctly, you said, let's move this from Prentice to 902. That, if I recall it right, and what do you want to do with that motion would be my question, or bring it back.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Councillor Ramirez. Yeah, the point of that motion was so that we could have the discussion. I'm not actually happy with that motion as I made it. If I were to make a new motion after whatever discussion here, it would be that the motion would simply read no to Prentice Park and not specify anything beyond that, which would leave us having another further round of discussions and motions and such.
Just to comment, and just so I understand, Councillor Shoesmith, so in your comments, your previous comments, you said you put that motion on the table for discussion. The motion you're describing now, and it was not your intention, as I understood you to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and it was not your intention to delay the project any further. The current motion as you describe it strikes me as something that would very much delay the project further. Can you clarify for me, please?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. My point with that would be to just put this to bed one way or the other, so that people can see, well, how to phrase it. I mean, I think I'm fairly clear. I'm not really happy with either site. It's the scale and scope, which I accept. I mean, I was the minority on those issues, and that's fine. I'm not making that motion at this moment. I'm just saying that if I were to bring that motion back forward, that's the motion as I would make it. Understanding that would indeed monstrously gum up this process.
Thank you. I'm going to have to confer with our corporate officer. We do have a proposal to bring back the previous motion, an option to do it. An option to do that, yeah. We don't have a new motion yet. He hasn't made a motion. And I'm wondering if we should read that and look to council to see if they want to bring that back. And then we can move from that point forward. Would you mind?
The optional motion to raise a matter previously deferred is that council move the motion to relocate the fire hall sites to 902 Second Ave, Fernie, BC, previously deferred at the August 12 regular meeting, be considered at this time.
So I'll look to council. Is there anybody willing to move that motion? Councillor Hamilton?
I don't wish to move the motion. I actually have a procedural question.
Please.
If we don't move the motion and it stays tabled, does it just stay tabled in perpetuity?
I don't know. It dies on the table, as they say. Okay, okay. So nobody's moved it. So Councillor Ramadas?
I will move it, Your Worship. I just want to have the conversation here so that commitment. We have the power of voting on
Yep.
issues. Let's complete the conversation. So I will move it.
Thank you. Seconder?
That's the motion to move to 902, correct?
Yeah.
I will second the motion in order that we may have the vote and the discussion.
Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Spent a lot of time over the last week and actually the last 19 months, as was pointed out earlier, thinking about, this whole process. As was pointed out in the public participation period, I did not vote for Prentice Park as my primary location. As many have said, I don't think there is a perfect location. If we choose to move it to 902, we are going to have a contingent of the community who is upset, who is going to come and petition us to change the location, who is going to be in our faces as well, to change the site to another option. In my time on council, it's only been 2 terms, but this has come before us twice now, choosing a site. I don't think we're ever going to find a perfect site where everybody in the community is happy. What I do look at when I'm reading this report, when I review all of the materials that we've gone over, is we went through an extremely thorough process. I don't know where we could have done more public outreach earlier in the process. I don't know where the community could have had more opportunity to provide us feedback. I'm sure people out there are already hammering away posts and comments online about where they think we could have. But at the end of the day, we are elected to make tough decisions, and we need to build a new fire hall. The longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. We just saw a report on, we're looking at $1.5 to $3 million to upgrade our current temporary facility. We're looking at a minimum $170,000 to $100,000 for site remediation if we change spots. We're putting a $7 million grant at risk. Nothing saying we're going to get that grant. If we do, fantastic. If we don't, we're still in the same spot. But we've got all these additional costs from changing. So for that reason, I don't like it, but I'm going to vote to continue with the direction that council voted to move previously.
Thank you. Councillor Adia Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. I think it's fairly well known publicly that I too did not support the Prentice Park location. I think that we have had significant feedback against the site. One of the things that bothers me is we did lead the community to believe that we would have a referendum. And due to unforeseen changes, council voted not to have a referendum. It's not legally required to do so. However, it would be disingenuous of me in the extreme if I was to say that I did not realize that people were going to use the borrowing referendum that they were expecting for the last couple of years to vote against the site. One of the things that's been really bothering me these last few days, and I think it's probably, I'm not alone. I don't like to speak for others, but I would speculate that I'm not alone. We are well aware of the opposition to Prentice Park, but we have heard from several citizens. I have heard it in person. I have received emails that they are in support of the site, but that they are afraid of repercussions. So one of the things that I feel that is missing from this equation is perhaps there is more broad support for this site than we're aware of. If we can't conduct some kind of, I'm not suggesting a referendum because that has all kinds of legal implications. But if we don't continue to gather engagement, so my question would be, I think, to our CFO, if we were to proceed with some type of non-binding continuing to gather information, CFO, can we still proceed forward with the plan as it stands?
Mr. Burden?
The plan at Prentice?
Yes, CFO, yes. Like, can we have, I read what a non-binding opinion poll is that comes directly from the provincial site. A municipality can do that in any way, shape, or form they choose. Are we able to continue to proceed on the path that the majority of council voted while still gathering opinions that are non-binding? Perhaps there's broader community support than we're aware of. Perhaps there's not. I don't know. One of the things that has particularly bothered me, and I'm going to be really honest, has been waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, is I believe there's broad support in the community to build a fire hall. It is the location that has proven divisive. I think also that our firefighters, who are clearly, by the very nature of their work, community-minded, have faced the storm along with council. And I think it's sad for the community, sad for our firefighters, that all we are hearing is opposing voices. And I don't know that we've made proper space, Your Worship, for all voices, and that bothers me.
Any comments, Mr. Burden?
Thanks, Councillor Adia Kelly. I mean, to answer your direct question as I heard it, we can gather opinions and proceed with the project, but would continue spending money on designing the site, and more money would be wasted if we switch. You know, the most obvious thing that came to mind was a online survey, but I would need specific direction from council, what exactly the tool is they want to use. And as I think I mentioned earlier, our consultation with other municipalities is that this approach is not recommended given the informal feedback that council received a couple of years ago.
And in fairness, continues to receive. Mr. Burdick, your slide, sorry, Councillor McIsaac, I see there, your slide indicated, I think it was 5 and 4 and 2 against the Prentice site, but maybe it's due to our negligence of sharing this with our corporate officer and yourself, is that we continue to receive daily multiple emails for and against, and the number, and that sort of woefully underestimates the number that we have received. Not your fault, as I say, but we do continue now to receive feedback. It just keeps coming. I personally, I don't know that we need to go through another process that will, cost us additional money, create uncertainty potentially in the community that it will change the outcome on both sides. Yeah, I think we risk deepening and continuing the divisiveness if we enter into a formal process to do that. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I want to make a couple comments about Councillor Adia Kelly's point about the non-binding vote. One is that I feel one of the underlying implications of that is that hasn't already happened. And in fact, we actually did significant community outreach, and we have received quite a bit of feedback 18, 19 months ago, as well as recently.
The concern I guess I have specifically with this idea that we might hold some sort of vote while moving forward with the grant application and in effect trying to have our cake and eat it too, is that if we're going to abide by the results of the vote, then it is disingenuous for us to make the application suggesting that we are prepared, we have a site plan, we have a Class B estimate and so on, because we might be changing. If we're planning to change, then it is a binding vote. So I can't imagine anything worse for this group of people in this room than to go out and ask them to vote on their opinion, give us the suggestion that they want to move from Prentice Park, and then have us decide not to. So I feel the risk of putting this up for vote again either creates false hope, which would be terrible, or jeopardizes the entire process, which would be terrible. Those are the only two possible outcomes that I can imagine from putting this up to a non-binding vote at this time. If we were going to move to a vote, then let's make it a vote. Let's have an actual referendum. Let's make it binding on council. Let's forego any grants. Let's forego all the money. Let's start over from 18 months ago, have a whole new process. We're putting insurance costs at risk. We're putting excessive taxes at risk, the site at risk, increasing another 18 months of divisiveness in the community. But that would be the only justified path if we're actually going to go out and ask for community opinion, is let's actually really do it. Let's not pretend to do it and then maybe decide to agree with the people. So I would not support that.
Thank you. Councillor Amadas?
The thing that bothers me, Your Worship, is like we are presupposing the result here. Like if the project is good and if it is bringing the community together and if there is a majority of the voice that wants this fire hall at that right location, you don't have anything to worry about. You put it for a vote. And I firmly believe that we should be treating our citizens as adults. They will go vote knowing fully well that if they say change location from Prentice to 902, there is a chance that we'll be jeopardizing our funding for this project. So let's trust our citizens on this. The question here is, I understand there was a whole bunch of things that happened and we were always planning for a referendum. It didn't happen. I appreciate the staff's entrepreneurial nature here in this whole process, but this is on us. We had this implicit understanding with our citizens that there would be a referendum or some kind of a say. And another point that I want to make, Your Worship, is this is not new. The opposition for Prentice has been ongoing since the day we voted, even before that. And they've never had an opportunity to have a say on this, which is a real issue here. I know there was online survey, we have the results, but it's not black and white, it's not very clear. You just can't say whether our citizens are in support or opposed to it. So that's my problem here, in that we have never put an intentional work here to listen to our citizens. And that just bothers me.
Well, I frankly wouldn't agree with that assessment. I think we have done a lot and staff has done a lot of diligent, determined work to hear from our citizens, and we've had that report back to us tonight. Councillor Hamilton.
No, I don't need to say anything else on this matter. I don't think, well, actually, that's not true. You know, the other thing that is running through the back of my mind is, what does any delay on this project do as a cascading effect on all of the other work plans? You know, I've heard people talk about wastewater treatment, water treatment. You know, the list is never ending of the projects that we need staff to be working on. Delaying this is not just going to impact the grant opportunity and the funding for this project. It's going to delay a whole bunch of other projects is work plans get shifted and tasks have to get reprioritized. To the point about the referendum and, we're not listening to the people. I do struggle with that one as well. We have had plenty of opportunity for people to provide us feedback. I'm going to call it out right now. We've been told that there's a petition with 1,600 names on it. I haven't seen it. How come that hasn't been presented to council, submitted to the city for us to review in advance of this meeting? So I'm really challenged with putting any more delay on this project with the notion that we're not listening.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks to Mrs. Weir and Chief Morgan for being online during their vacation. I know how hard it is to call in and be in a strange place. Just to be clear, I didn't call anybody monsters. I did have a very long Facebook post, and I did say that moving forward, some people are not going to like this location. That's fine. And democracy is built on different viewpoints, but democracy also means respecting majority decisions made after a transparent, informed process. We ask for civil discourse so that everyone can voice their opinion, whether they are for or against. I didn't see that last Tuesday. I saw yelling and I saw jeering. It was not a very comfortable place to be in. I saw one individual come up and tell the mayor something absolutely awful. That, to me, when I talk to my friends who were watching and could hear the yelling, that is a upset mob. Okay. I wrote a bunch of things down.
Please.
On the covenant and change, it's undeniable that Crow's Nest Industries and land donations have helped to shape our community, to which we give thanks. The parks, the neighborhoods, public facilities we enjoy today are in no small part due to the legacy and generosity of previous generations. I do respect the covenant tied to Prentice Park. That being said, communities evolve. No one could have predicted the safety standards or fire protections needs we face today, especially with the rise of climate change. I believe that if the original donors were in this room, in these chairs, and the council who accepted the land could see Fernie today and the needs that we have, they would recognize the need to adapt. Their intent was always to benefit the community, and that's exactly what this council has done in the past. That's why we made it. There was a letter to the editor on ethics, and it was a call on that we had unethical behavior. I read that letter from the Wilson family, and I want to address the statement that council has been unethical. It is not only unfair, but untrue. Ethics means transparency, fairness, accountability, and decision-making in the public's interest. Council follows a transparent process, made decisions in public in this room, and weighed all perspectives, including the historic covenant. At the end of the day, ethics also means ensuring Fernie citizens have timely emergency protection in a safe, functional fire hall. It would be unethical to delay this project any further for not only this generation, but the next. The financial reality is this project is for the greater good of Fernie. Grants like this come around once every few years. And if we add a year of delay, we're staring at all those numbers that we saw earlier. 46 years of delay needs to stop here. Core services. In the following meeting, we'll be talking about core versus non-core services. And many of you will want to stay around for the next meeting. Fire protection is not optional. It's a core service. These are our community protectors, our first responders. Right now, they're working out of a facility that's through 4 gates and umpteen steps that limit our response time. That's not good enough. We have 4 ball diamonds, but 0 fire halls. If you list every service the city provides, in my books, fire comes out in number 3, right after water and wastewater. Parks and recreation matter, they really do, but they do not rank above life safety. I hope that my fellow councillors will decide to leave this at Prentice Park, we can finally end 46 years of delay. And I hope that we don't cave to fear and lose this chance of a lifetime.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eddie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. There was, I think this might be for you, CFO. There was a comment.
Sorry,
made-
Councillor, I'll just ask you to pause.
Yeah, I'll
as
just wait.
people
Thanks,
make
Your
their way
Worship.
down. Sorry, looks like we're reallocating seats as well. Thank you, Councillor. Please proceed.
Thanks, Your Worship. One of the comments made tonight, CFO, was by a speaker who said that Shell has indicated to them, I wasn't quite clear to who, and I apologize for that, maybe I missed it, but that they would not intervene in this matter. Has the city received any indication from Shell that they will not intervene? If so, in what context? As my understanding was earlier, that Shell had said they were willing to, I'm not sure of the legal term, Your Worship, revert the right or right of reverter.
Right of reverter.
If council voted in the majority to proceed with the project. So what we heard tonight was not that. Can you elaborate, CFO?
Thanks, Councillor Adia Kelly. I don't actually have a copy of the letter, but
Oh. Good stuff.
what's the date on that?
All right, thanks.
5 o'clock today from Shell Canada.
Yeah. So the latest communication from Shell yeah, so the latest communication we had from Shell was dated July 4th, where they indicated that if council voted to move forward with the location, then they would remove the covenant. And the way this email reads to me is when it says that won't be intervening, that reads to me like they won't be intervening in these emails of opposition, not the process itself. So I think it does still say here that it's up to the citizens of Fernie and the city councillors and the administration to decide. So that to me reads that their message on July 4th still holds true.
Thank you, Ms. Burden. Further, Councillor?
No, thanks, Your Worship.
No? Any other comments from council? Oh, Councillor Shoesmith. You just turned your mic off.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Yeah, as I previously stated, I will vote for neither of those sites.
Thank you. Couple of things, and I've said it from the beginning, I very much appreciate people's passion in this issue and the way concerns have been brought respectfully forward. That is very important to this public discourse. So thank you for those of you who've done that. I'm not in favor of any sort of delay on this project. I've said it from the start, and the fire department moved out of the fire hall at this site in 1979 and have had to work from sufficient but substandard facilities ever since. I don't think it's responsible for me as a member of this council to delay this any further. I think we have heard a great deal from the public, and any process that asks a question that further delays a decision, in my mind, further deepens the divisions that this has created in the community. We were elected to lead. That is not a pleasant position to be in these circumstances. We will move from this on immediately onto wastewater. And that, I can tell you, is not going to be a small ticket item. It is incredibly complex and expensive. And just for your information up front, wastewater is one of the issues, does not require a referendum for borrowing at the council level. It is exempt from asking that question. So, you know, as I said last week, as a council, we've been put in a very difficult position of, I don't want to be unkind, but of picking up a bunch of drop balls that have been kicked down the road for many years. And the responsible thing to do is to deal with those issues. And I take great pride in being a responsible individual, and I appreciate, as I've said, the passion that people bring to this, but it is time for a decision, and anything else just delays, in my mind. Or pardon me, it deepens the division in the community, and that's not fair to anyone. So with that, I will call the vote, and the vote, just for clarity, is that the motion is to relocate the fire hall to 902 2nd Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, and thank you everybody for this. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:12 and we'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll reconvene in 2 minutes. One minute. 1 minute. Can we reconvene, please? Councillor Shoesmith, Councillor Ramirez. Councillor Audia Kelly. Councillor Audia Kelly, can we reconvene, please? No.
You're not sorry yet, but you will. I'm already sorry. I'm already sorry, Kev.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Is everybody back with us? Councillor Ramirez, are you? Okay. I know you indicated you had some complication. Do you need to leave now? Yeah, please. Yeah, understood. Yeah, thank you for staying.
You don't have to explain.
With that, as Councillor Ramirez makes his prearranged exit, I will call the Committee of the Whole meeting of Fernie City Council held on August 19th, 2025. So welcome everybody. Kisuk Yukit. We once again acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I will call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 8:24 p.m. and ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation that the agenda of the August 19th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4.1, a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendations. So the minutes of the July 15th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Roddy Kelly, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. A speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. Speakers are asked to state their full name and community of residence. And I'll turn to the gallery. Is there anybody in the gallery who would like to speak to our committee of the whole agenda? Mr. Inglis? You have 3 minutes from the moment you start.
Where's the
speaking.
clock? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public that have stayed and staff. Just one thing that come up to me here under the RCMP report. I just want to let you know, like, with my fully licensed corn sales and that I do every year, been doing it since COVID 2017. So I put anywhere from 10 to 8 hours in 2 days a week down by the empty lot by 7-Eleven. So I'm right there at the intersection, and it's this is part of the police, maybe traffic. It's just the amount of speed I see coming through there. And what really concerns me, yes, I'm there when the school is closed, but that speed is still there. And I don't see the presence of the RCMP locally setting up speed in that. That's one of my concerns. But one thing I'd like council to maybe look into is looking at coming around that corner, and this is also too tied into the fire hall. Coming around that corner, like these semis come through here, if they see a green light at McDonald's, they're still doing 60, 70. So when they come around that corner, it is a blind corner, and that blind corner could be for access of the fire truck using it to 15th Street onto Highway 3. But also too, you come down to that major intersection, that is a controlled intersection, but that is one of the only lights that doesn't have an overhead warning indicator. And now with new technology and everything, that you can put wireless overhead, and if you know what I'm talking about, is the overhead light that warns you before you come around that corner. Because I can tell you, just last week alone, in one day, I heard 3 semis locking up the tires. And those could have been kids crossing, but thankfully it wasn't. It was just traffic advancing because they had no warning of that light. So 2 things I would like to bring to your attention, please. Maybe you can discuss it with the RCMP when they make the presentation. It's just speed around town and on the highway. Like this corridor between bridge to bridge and down Coqueta Road, it's out of control. And you need to do something about it. I don't know what the numbers are going to say tonight. That's not my department, but I'm just telling you what I see out there in the public. And also too about Highway 3, bridge to bridge, you need to do something in that 60 zone, because it won't be long until somebody gets hurt. I don't want to see that, but I've been there and heard the screeches of the tires. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6.1, the Q1 quarterly update from our RCMP. Good evening, Officer Nielsen.
Did you want your presentation on screen?
Sure, that would help. Thank you.
And sorry, Officer Nielsen. Deb, can you set the clock as well when you have a moment? He's not to be
I know, do I get 10 minutes?
speed
again, or
conscious,
do I
but
get 10
you've
minutes again,
got
or-
10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes, well, yeah.
Click this one.
Once again, always warned in advance. I like this. So thank you. It's a pleasure to present again. I'll wait till my time starts. I guess so, right? So I mean, yeah, we're into the, obviously into our second quarter already. We're through our first quarter, which goes from April to the end of June, April 1st, the end of June. Overall, we were definitely above last year's call volume, not only for Fernie, but just generally amongst the area file numbers. Some interesting points within your total calls for service. The assault, those are non-domestic numbers, are up quite drastically, but I want to point out that if you go down to your cause disturbance and your breach of peach, that those are down. So basically what that equates to is and I reviewed not all, but some of those files today, that equates to something a little farther than usual. So you end up having like an assault occur where say a casual bar fight was occurring, where suddenly now it's, now you've got an assault, like somebody's been knocked down and they punched them in the head, et cetera. Those things have continued. So the numbers are basically the same there. You can see that mental health calls are up too as well, which isn't necessarily unusual for this time of year, just with the heat. Generally speaking, we also have had some new citizens come into the area. And so that's in turn sort of increased our numbers, generally speaking. You can notice that bike thefts are up a little bit. I think one point to mention there is that there's a lot of activity on social media for those thefts and certainly ones that aren't reported to us. So I think they're actually generally happening more often, pardon me, than they're being reported. A lot of them, from what I understand, reading through social media that I see, is most of the time those are either taking bikes to transport to somewhere else and they're generally recovered. I saw one today that was an older gentleman in the community that had his bike recovered and somebody brought it back to him. Where are we here? So typically our normal numbers throughout the rest of the typical statistics are more or less the same. Interestingly enough, for Fernie, the motor vehicle incidents are down. I can speak on somewhat to the point. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. All I can remember is the tabulation for the general area, including obviously the rest of the communities, not just Fernie itself, but traffic enforcement has actually increased dramatically. And we track that differently now than on just straightforward paper tickets. We actually have electronic tickets. I believe I mentioned that previously, that we issue now. And so those are much more easier to track. Generally, we can actually pull up the location where the ticket was issued, et cetera. And my apologies to some in the crowd. I did not bring those statistics fully with me. However, I can in the future. But definitely we're already halfway to our yearly goal for those, which again, is we're not trying to break records or anything. That's not it. It just demonstrates that the members are out there doing enforcement. Interesting part of that though, is the impaired driving's results, at least within Fernie, are down historically than previous years.
Oh, sorry, Councilor.
Sorry, I've got a wave. So does that stop my time? Just keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
This doesn't eat into your time.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll ask quickly.
No problem.
Thank you for being here. My question is with regards to the motor vehicle incidents in Fernie Muni versus RDK.
Sure.
One of the things that I'm continuously made aware of by being out there and also hearing from people is the vehicle incidents happening at the Riverside intersection and the Ski Hill intersection, which are technically RDK, but they feel like municipality. And I'm just wondering how much of those incidents are making up that RDK number, which are really related to what's going on in the city.
Well, and sorry, Staff Sergeant, for clarity, the Riverside intersection, both sides of that intersection, excluding the highway, so the Mount Fernie Provincial Park side and the Riverside are City of Fernie. So that is a City of Fernie interface with the.
I don't think Fred Vandenberg's property is in the City of Fernie.
No, but the road.
And the property on the other side.
The road is ours.
That road is, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So as far as like the total number of incidents in those areas?
Well, it's just more a case of like, are the regional district numbers being skewed by being in close proximity to Fernie, but they're just outside our border?
I'd love to be able to answer that question directly for you in that regard. Those are pretty finite areas versus what we would normally tabulate for you. So I'd have to get back to you on that. If you're wishing to get those numbers, I'm happy to get those.
I don't know how much I want to drill down, but I guess what I was hoping to learn is either discover that it is true or not true, the general belief that the Ski Hill intersection, for example, is terrible and there are constant incidents there, or that the Riverside intersection is very dangerous and there are constant incidents there. And I guess I was hoping to hear, is that those anecdotal stories, are they actually true?
Well, again, I'm not able to comment directly on those things right now without actually nailing down those particular results. Obviously don't specifically usually come to these things with trying to nail down one particular intersection versus the other. I can tell you based on my experience since I've been here that, personally as well as professionally, that I have been to accidents more so at the Ski Hill intersections than the one you're mentioning at the Mount Fernie Road. the provincial turnoff. That's my own personal experience as a police officer and just generally as a public, a person of the public. But yeah, as far as nailing those down, it'd be interesting experiment to try and see whether we could nail those down via location wise, but I'd have to do a complete search for those. So it's not something I can pull off right off the top. So unfortunately,
Fair enough.
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just again, anecdotally, there is the ICBC, you can track injury incidents and incidents above a certain dollar value
Yeah.
on their website by intersection.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, we can go through
And
those.
I'm not putting that on you,
No,
Staff
no.
Sergeant, of course. I'm just,
It's okay.
but it probably doesn't paint a
Well, it's,
complete picture.
yeah, I know, and it's changed historically anyway, just
Yeah.
because of the way the reporting is done now with being, under a certain amount versus over, right? So where before it was very minimal. And so if you looked historically over the years, you couldn't compare those because sometimes the reporting for those things just don't happen because you're considered to be under a certain value. Does it mean that those aren't reported? No, it just means that perhaps those aren't completed with the tracking that the ICBC requests through our MB 6020 form, which would be where you're getting those tabulations from. So generally, if somebody has a fender bender at an intersection, typically those aren't going to be reported up to ICBC. Those are just general numbers for collisions in our statistics. So those are reflected here as far as where the locations are, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Just, in relation to Councillor McKaiser's question, does the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, do they give you any data? Do they share any data with the RCMP whatsoever?
Well, certainly when we request it. Sorry, Councillor. Yeah. No,
Yeah, just in relation to highway, the amount of traffic coming through the area and, just
Yes,
overall.
certainly that's typically, those numbers are available to us.
Okay.
And certainly we have the relationship with the MOTT to be able to do those. Mostly in my experience, it's BC Highway Patrol that typically is referencing like highway numbers per se, as to where they do their enforcement and how they attack those things, because those are what those, an attack being obviously do the enforcement, sorry. How they're built that way, those are typical more towards that direction. And in my experience, typically we haven't focused on that entirely, like as far as like sharing those numbers for enforcement. Random locations, historically for myself anyway, have tended to work better. But I appreciate the fact that, focused on a certain intersection or whatever could be accomplished too as well. But
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just again, kind of taking that same train of thought, and a lot of conversations that I've had over the last couple of weeks have revolved around the highway to town corridor, and a lot of anecdotal traffic increases and times for accessing the highway, making left-hand turns and everything. So to get to my point, I would be interested if in a future presentation you were able to pull some of those numbers, be it accidents, be it traffic volume or enforcement
sure,
actions in that ski hill to town corridor.
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. That's certainly something we can form a part of the next presentation. We're always willing to adapt and, go to what council's needs are. So as far as the numbers go, again, I'd have to research that and then work a little bit through that. So it may take us a couple times to get it right to where, has been typical with the Fernie reporting, et cetera, too, as well, which is fine. It's just a matter of, it just takes us some time to do that. But certainly I can make note of that and we can do that in the future.
Councillor McKaiser.
Thank you, Worship. This is just a purely curiosity question, but it raises from the public input comments. We do see the CVSE vehicles here doing commercial extension. If they witness a commercial vehicle speeding, do they stop them?
Sorry, I didn't hear I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to. Can they stop them?
Yeah, if they witness a commercial vehicle speeding through town, will they stop them with that regard?
Yeah, no, I've had experiences personally where they've stopped them for those reasons. Yeah. And then vice versa. Obviously we have one of our local Highway Patrol people, Constable Weber. He actively works with them. He did just last week for a couple of days, just doing vehicle inspections. So it definitely works both ways.
Right. And I mentioned that only because there is a pretty steady presence of the CVSE vehicles around. So I'm just, when it's, which is good. And it seems interesting that we still seem to anecdotally witness a lot of speeding and stuff, even though it's not because there's no attention being paid to it, clearly. So
No, well, I recognize obviously, and I would entirely support Mr. Inglis in his earlier comments that, you know, speed is definitely an increasing issue in any community now. Traffic files, as I've stated before, typically are the number one file that we deal with traditionally in any detachment. In any detachment where I've worked, it's always been traffic. And those are the things that we tend to focus on. You know, definitely here anyway, as far as that goes, like historically, since I've been here in the 3.5, oh, not 3.5 quite yet, but getting there, 3.5 years I've been here, that's definitely been the focus and has been the request from the community, which is also the focus of our projects that we have, not only in Fernie, as we call it the Izzy Dizzy project, as we tend to call it locally within the detachment, but also Sparwood and then Elford too as well. They all have very established and well-intentioned enforcement that we do, and it's all part of it. Now, again, it depends on what's going on too. As file counts increase, and which they have this year, and the you know, prisoner counts in our particular case has gone up, not extremely, but certainly enough to pay attention to. Those things mean that members are more focused on doing investigational work as opposed to positive enforcement. And that's just the reality of our business that we do, is that we have to focus on those things too as well. So those are things that are all kind of inclusive, if that makes sense to everybody.
Thank you. Back to you.
Okay.
Inspector.
I'll see where I can go. So we had motor vehicle incidents. As I mentioned before, the imperative investigations are down. Doesn't necessarily mean the members aren't doing anything. For example, obviously during the recent festival, they were out there a couple nights in a row doing vehicle checks, and I think they stopped over 80 vehicles in one night. Had, I think, one imperative investigation out of that. The next night there was nothing, which has been historically what's happened with that particular event. Beyond that, we're having some brief communication with the RDEK resulting from our victim services program and support, just because provincially that's changing a bit, which you may or may not be aware of. I see the mayor nodding his head, so okay. So there's a bit of a switch going towards community-based support for violent offenses and sexual offenses. And that's something that we've just discovered in the last couple of weeks, or just been told about. So we're working our way with the local community groups to see how that's going to be addressed. And that's certainly something that's different.
Sorry, Staff Sergeant. Sorry, Deb.
Pause again.
Does that mean, if I understand it correctly, that it's more downloading to the community to support victim services?
Well, no, traditionally,
broadening
traditionally what's happened in cities has been municipalities, larger municipalities. The community support groups for victims has been sort of focused that way for larger things. Now they're starting to move that towards all victim services. So from the way I understand it at this point basically is that any type of violent offense or sexual offense will move towards the community support group. That by itself creates not issues for us, but just how do we address that, and how do we continue to support the people as they go through court and the court process, et cetera, because community support groups handle things differently than what we do. So it's just a matter of trying to have a working model with that. So we're already in contact with the local group here in Fernie, the working group through the community groups here. And we're working through that. I believe we actually have the meeting next week, and just to sort of see how we kind of move forward with that. So It's just a heads up more than anything. I do know that the RDEK is exploring potentially more funding options, for victim services, which you may or may not be aware of, but they are trying to do that, and we're helping them, you know, with those type of things too as well. So just to give you a heads up about those.
Thank you.
Obviously, I know one of the council has mentioned the electric bikes we've had. We have been out with the electric bikes. We did purchase those at the start of July. There has been at least, I think, 4 patrols. We have been impacted directly by just the federal mandate with pressure on budgets, et cetera, that have happened. So most of our seasonal patrols have shifted to not an overtime measure for that from an extra cost perspective, but just from trying to build that within our normal shift schedule. So that's created a bit of anxiety for me, I guess you could say, especially to deal with the rather large effect that the South Country has on our area and on our policing efforts, but also just what we had planned to do throughout the summer here in Fernie, working hopefully with bylaws and being able to patrol through the city more, et cetera. It's just helped to mitigate us. We've still managed to do it since we've been through this process about, I think it's been available to us for about 3 weeks now. We managed to shift schedule around. I myself was on a boat patrol down in the Kookanusa on Thursday, which was part of my regular shift, including the other members. So we're trying to shift around for that, and we're doing the same thing with the bikes. For example, Corporal Dyer will be on a bike during the Derby. So, you know, that's something that'll be around there, and we're obviously trying to do more planning for that too.
Councillor Hamilton.
Bit of a, it's going to come across perhaps as tongue-in-cheek question, but it's not actually meant it, as we have received correspondence about it. But on your e-bikes, will you be patrolling the parks and pathways for speeding as well? Like, would that kind of be part of that?
It's an interesting question that's definitely come up within our group, within the detachment lately. The amount of, especially amongst your Fernie members, in regards to how electric bikes are being used in the community, how in some cases, you know, it doesn't necessarily manage the age group, really, it doesn't, but you know, there's certainly an overwhelming, or starting to become an overwhelming presence with that, and just how bikes are put into our Motor Vehicle Act, which essentially they're vehicles like anything else. So you can be enforced as a vehicle like anything else. So those are challenges that we've started to deal with. And certainly there's been ample discussion within the detachment as to how we approach that, especially as we get to September and a new school year, and just the whole focus, as we've already indicated, on traffic. That makes sense? Thank you. That one over here.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. So just for my own edification here, to clarify, e-bikes are falling under the like Motor Vehicle Act.
A regular pedal bike falls under the Motor Vehicle.
Oh, does it?
Yes, it does.
Terrible. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you can be fined under the Motor
He's
Vehicle
gonna-
Act like anything else.
He's
and-
going to improve his behavior.
Historically, one of my, and I hate to hesitate to say favorite tickets, but one of my most historical tickets was giving a guy to a bingo ticket. I was riding a bike through the city on the sidewalk with no helmet and crashed into a fire truck. You know, yeah, he got the ticket while he was on a backboard in the hospital. So, yeah, and I hesitate to say favorite ticket, but it was his fault. So, didn't cause much damage to the fire, thankfully, but,
thank you.
This is a long time ago, so I apologize. Yeah, so anyway, so you can see some of our stats here for on, I'm not sure which pages, I'm sorry, where the violation tickets are issued. Where the, we have approximately like 23 warnings within the municipality. There's been 67 or 76 with warnings in there. This includes BCHP, British Columbia Highway Patrol, sorry, it's missituated there, it said BHCP. And then through that, so you can see our statistics there. Obviously, BC Highway Patrol typically does not focus within the city boundaries. Even though the highway cuts through it, they do not typically focus on that. That's not part of their mandate, just so you know. Not a me decision, so don't come after me for that one. Although I will freely admit that our local BCHP will do enforcement in the city when he's traveling through, without question. So, so we've, as far as like crime reduction stuff, we continue to track our patrols of the downtown bar area. We completed 24 in the last quarter. We've had a bit of an influx of individuals that involve curfew checks or compliance checks, and we've done 42 of those. As you can see, we've arrested 17 individuals in Fernie municipality proper and released on undertakings with restricted conditions. 3 individuals are held for a bail hearing, and were released by a justice after going through that process. We obviously have continued our seasonal South Country patrols. We've adapted those quite a lot to the area now, more to give flexibility to the member that's been doing them for us. Just because he was literally worked every weekend last year and it was a bit much for him, well, more so for his spouse. So it was something that we tried to adjust for him, but he continues to do that, and he is doing that to great success. We've been able to, our radio techs have been able to actually give us an added benefit of being that we're typically, historically, once you get through the tunnel, we've had to switch over to Cranbrook repeater. So we're working with our members, not knowing what's going on in the South Country. Now they've managed to switch that and call it the Kookanusa repeater, and we're able to actually hear our members. And so that's been very beneficial as of late, especially when you're doing roadside checks, which Constable Malone does a ton of down in the South Country. And so we can actually hear if he's in trouble and we can head down there to help if we have to, as opposed to waiting to dispatch to get through, and minutes can count in those situations. So we're happy to have those. We completed the Pizza with Police initiative, which was a project I mentioned before that carried through all the grade schools. And we've also started our, oh, my brain is going deceased on me, with Wild Minds, with the Indigenous Métis youth within the schools. We've started that process for that too as well, which is sort of a piece of the Pizza with Police, but more focused on Indigenous and Métis kids, working with the Wild Mind group in Fernie here. And so what that allows us to do is help to build relationships in those communities, is moving from like a ununiformed police officer to will be in September and October to a uniformed police officer, to give that better impression of like, hey, we're just normal people, and hey, we just happen to be police. So that was something that was derived from, which I mentioned before, from a study that was completed, actually a PhD doctorate that was completed, and funding was obtained through the province for that. And we were able to do that for all the schools in the area. So it was really a good and actually truly enjoyable program for all the staff members, including your Fernie municipality member, Christina. She was actually quite involved in those in the Fernie and the other areas. It was kind of neat. Victim Services continues to roll out in those two as well, and do some presentation at Fernie Secondary. And then of course, we've had various visits at detachment tours, et cetera. And we also had an officer at the graduation ceremony. Obviously we have an upcoming involvement with the Lions Club Derby this year, which we're really excited about. We've had a long-standing vehicle available to us that we patched here, I think, a couple of years ago, which is nicknamed Sergeant Slam. It's literally the last remaining Crown Vic in the province, as far as I'm aware. And something exciting is going to happen with that in support of in support of our Cops for Cancer rider, Corporal Emma Dyer. She's riding for the Cops for Kids cancer ride, which the RCMP obviously leads in the Southeast District. And they ride from Kelowna around the big loop up through Golden and through Revelstoke and back down again over to Kamloops and everything. I've had the good pleasure of being a part of that ride, and Emma's donated her time this year to do that. So we'll be doing a fundraising piece, graciously considered by the Lions Club in Fernie, for us to be able to do that there, as well as do something with the vehicle, which I'm not going to say because Ted and I were talking about that earlier, and I can't reveal that yet. So.
Well,
but it will be kind of fun. So.
Well, thank you for that, Staff Sergeant, and that's an interesting teaser you've given us there. Appreciate the presentation. Questions from council?
No.
Councillor McCausey.
Thank you, Worship. No question, but a comment to your members that are going to be attending the Lions Derby, and that is, bring more stickers than you think.
Thank you.
So there were many requests for them at the music festival. So.
Well, we're hoping to have the vehicle, the name Sergeant Slam was derived from our post garage unit. They came up with that. They actually put it on the side of the car. So it's I mean, the initial port was to be involved in the Derby proper, but of course that would be more or less a misuse of funds, considering all the work involved to make those things prepared. But the Lions Club was very gracious and attempted to do that for us with community support. We had lots of stuff with that. But yeah, so we've changed directions. And again, I think it'll be kind of fun. And they can see the council there with his hand raised. So I will let him go.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I have no comment on Sergeant Slam at the Derby. I would just like to thank the police for the outreach efforts. Having you guys there at Canada Day at the dunk tank was a lot of fun, and they were easily the best crowd draw. They certainly were.
Fantastic.
Oh, I'm hurt.
I know they enjoyed it, and I appreciate the fact we were number one. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just have one question from your report. Staff Sergeant, sorry, Councillor McCausey, can you unplug this timer thing? It's flashing, please. Thank you. And you probably can't provide much in the way of detail.
Sure.
But we've talked at this table about B&Es founded and unfounded.
Yes.
And now I see there's one for the first time in a while that was founded.
Yes.
And was that a residential B&E? Was that a business B&E? Can you comment? If you can't say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I really can't. I meant to look at that today, and it just got away from me, and I apologize for that because I realized that would probably come up. From what I recall from that, I do not believe it was significant, but I don't want to make it minimize it for the person involved or anything like that. But I can't recall the exact details.
Okay,
So it'd
thank
be
you.
incorrect for me to make any further comments.
No, fair enough.
I
appreciate it.
apologize to the person that was affected by that because clearly I don't know off the top of my head. So.
No, no, thank you. Other questions, comments from council?
Sorry? Oh, that's correct. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Now I know it. And yeah, we were able to work really closely with the individuals involved. I mean, since Mr. Inglis mentioned it, we did work with him involving that, and he was very supportive of the investigation. And we're not entirely sure, and I say this respectfully to Chris and his mom, what actually happened there. Other than the point that it appears that somebody came into the residence. They didn't do anything except when Chris's mom came downstairs, they left. So again, I apologize, Chris. I'm not going to try to go any further with that, but that's where it was. Thank you for mentioning that, Chris. Yeah, that was Constable Craig that was there and had spoken with Mr. Inglis and his mom. And I think overall, yeah, it's disturbing. I don't know how to chalk that up beyond the fact that perhaps, I mean, it does happen in my experience where somebody coming from a location where typically they may have been or not been inebriated, perhaps. Not to suggest this was the case in this particular instance, but there's a potential for that given the circumstances that we're aware of. So again, not trying to minimize the impact on Mrs. Inglis at all. That was definitely obviously a traumatic thing for her to go through. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
And thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Good to see everybody again.
Take care. Item 7.2, a quarterly update from Bylaw Services from our. Oh, no, I apologize. I skipped one. Not the first time. I apologize, Ms. Jansen. Item 7.1, Q2 quarterly update, Council Strategic Plan and Dashboard. Sorry, if you gentlemen can take that outside, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Sorry for anyone watching at home. We're experiencing a bit of technical startup difficulties.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a short presentation this evening to accompany the information in your report in the agenda package.
And I apologize, Director Jansen. I don't think I introduced you appropriately. You're the Director of Asset Management.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll start with an update on major projects. This is where the focus is at this time in our quarterly reporting journey. I'll share an overall major project dashboard, including kind of key overarching takeaways, highlight some completed projects and celebrate those wins, take a look at project priorities and critical projects underway, and then touch on implementation status, specifically areas of concern. Then I'll hand over the mic to my colleague, Corporate Officer McCluby, to speak to council resolutions. And then I'll just touch on operational measures. Just a disclaimer that this is an information report and directors and the CAO will bring any significant issues, risks, recommendations forward separately on an as-needed basis. And this is a Q2 report, so many of the issues identified in this report have already come forward to council or are in the queue. Okay. So just to kick it off with the sort of overview dashboard, this quarter continues to be busy with new project starts, 32% down from Q1. This is typical of our first half of the year with a focus on procurement of technical and construction services. We also have seen 44% of projects being focused on critical to maintaining existing levels of service, as well as 38% of projects are sustainability initiatives for those same core service areas. Projects do continue to face delays, 42% of projects, largely related to resourcing constraints. As well. Pardon me?
Sorry, Councilor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. I read resourcing constraints through there a lot. What's a typical resourcing constraint? Is it lack of people power, or is it procurement of stuff, or like what, or is it just a whole bucket of things that contribute to that thing?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is a bit of a bucket. I did in the summary report or the project list kind of try to give you a little bit more information. At this time, we don't have like a matrix that determines that. It's really at the discretion of the directors accountable to those projects. And we have seen several vacancies in the last quarter. So certainly resourcing from a staffing perspective. Yeah.
But it is a very good question because it begs the follow-on question, which is, are we doing too much with too little? And I get that some of these are major projects required for the sustaining of core services, but are we biting up more than we can chew?
I think broadly looking at the numbers, it would suggest that it's ambitious, but it's not necessarily that our work planning is biting off more than we can chew. The nature of the business is that there's always things that are coming up that are distracting or diverting our attention and resourcing to those, whether it's emerging policy areas or shifting council direction, granting opportunities, et cetera.
Okay.
So it's not as cut and dry.
No. Thank you.
So just to wrap up some of the highlights here, completion rate this quarter does continue to be pretty low. But again, that is related to the timing of many projects we procure in Q1 and Q2, and we deliver through Q2 through Q4 typically. Again, for anybody watching, the full project list is attached as Appendix C. And again, at this stage in our sort of centralized project reporting, this style of dashboard is focused on sort of communicating resourcing capacity and overall resourcing spent on maintaining existing levels. While we recognize this is critical awareness into our operations, we are looking at incremental improvements to communicating project objectives and outcomes and overall impact. So moving on to completed projects. So there were 16 completed projects this quarter, up from Q1. Completed projects include several shovel-ready projects that are in the queue seeking external funding, 3 of which have active grant applications submitted. Work to build structure to project tracking will increase our ability to interpret sort of project completion rates quarter over quarter and year over year, but projects do continue to be completed at a similar pace as last quarter. A few highlighted completed projects from this quarter include the launch of the community newsletter. We did mention it in the last quarter, but we hadn't gotten any numbers because we were only days into it. So in April, the city launched a monthly e-newsletter deployed on the first Thursday of each month. City Connect is another tool to keep residents informed and engaged on city business. In quarter two, 170 residents subscribed to that newsletter, and that number continues to increase through the summer months.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I did have a quick question. Was that 170 new subscribers in Q2, or because of the launch time, is that 170 subscribers total at the moment?
I believe that's total at the moment. Or sorry, total to the end of Q2. Another celebration, while the annual municipal report is a legislative requirement, it was a significant shift in the way that that we have communicated our reports in the past. So in Q2, we published our 2025 annual municipal report with a progress report and forecast reflecting council's strategic plan goals. These quarterly reports will continue to inform future annual reporting on advancing council's strategic plan and community priorities. And another exciting one in the tech transformation world is cloud permits. So in Q2, the city went live with online building permit application portal with nearly 20 firms participating in the pre-launch virtual walkthrough and training session. The tool went live on June 4, marking a significant milestone in modernizing planning and development services for the city of Fernie. While there's still lots of refining to that module and our processes, marks a significant milestone, and this phase will then be followed up with the anticipated launch of the online planning permit application module later this year. And finally, the wastewater treatment plant critical maintenance. So sludge removal from aeration basin 2 was completed. The diffusers in aeration basin 1 were replaced, and spot repairs to the headers that pipe the air from the blowers to the ponds were completed. These steps have led to increased dissolved oxygen levels, decreased odor, and improved efficiency of our treatment process. Moving on to project prioritization. So a few key takeaways. Again, the majority of the work that we're working on is around core service delivery, and then also around maintaining existing levels of service and sustaining those over time. Of note, only about 19% of projects are considered important to maintaining the existing level of service that are broadly considered non-core services. So it is important to acknowledge that council to date hasn't formally engaged on categorizing municipal services as core versus non-core, and therefore interpretation by senior staff is based on typical municipal service, core service areas. A few highlighted critical projects underway. So I did mention a little bit about the wastewater treatment system already, but the work continues with the wastewater system compliance design project, with many components of the municipal wastewater regulation application being completed to advance towards the October submission to the regulator and to establish the details for an effective set of treatment plant upgrades to achieve regulatory compliance. On the potable water side, the options analysis study aimed at addressing concerns around impacts of the city's water supply due to increased selenium levels in the Elk River watershed and the James White Park Well aquifer. So this was awarded to a consultant in collaboration with Elk Valley Resources, and work has commenced. The work underway will update the original well protection plan, incorporating the EVR water quality implementation plan that looks to reduce the amount of selenium in the Elk River as we analyze data from the past 7 years of operation. And then again, obviously, the fire hall replacement is a critical project underway. I don't need to give another update on that. Just in terms of key takeaways on implementation status, half of our projects, nearly half, are considered on track, and a significant portion are experiencing delays for various reasons. During the Q1 presentation, council's inquiries around project delays were focused on understanding kind of the cause of the challenges. So we have included a little bit more information in that project list there, just for some context, including, things like delay, resourcing to emerging policy challenges and project dependencies. All right, so I'll just pass this over.
Thank you, Director Jansen. Your Worship and Council, if it is okay, I would like to work in tandem with the Deputy Corporate Officer. She will click and I will speak. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll provide a brief summary of some of the resolutions Council made during the second quarter of 2025, finishing with the status of those Q2 resolutions as they stand today. Firstly, I want to correct an error made in the staff report, which states that Council approved a total of 24 resolutions during this quarter. That number should be 25 resolutions, and I have a slide to help break down by category those 25 decisions in table form. I don't want to be touching all 25 resolutions, but I'll quickly go over some of the highlights here. Perfect. Bylaws, plans and strategies. Council will recall that we adopted 2 bylaws in Q2, the building and plumbing bylaw and the tax rates bylaw. Council also gave direction to staff to include the 2020 Fernie Heritage Strategy into the updated official community plan, which is currently a work in progress. Accessibility and inclusion continue to be a focus with Council, endorsing the Elk Valley Regional Accessibility Plan in partnership with the Accessibility Committee made up of Elkford, Sparwood and Fernie municipalities. And the resort development strategy was submitted to the province in Q2. Staff are currently preparing for 2025 intake of events and animation funding program. A presentation on the RDS was shared with YQT. However, the Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities advises that we are still awaiting a response from the province on our submission. Community events and economic development. Council continued to support our local business and event communities by supporting Fernie Chamber of Commerce's applications to both the local festivals and destination events grant programs to help deliver the Grizz Days 2026 and confirmed the city's commitment to providing RMI funding in 2026. Council also endorsed the Chamber's application to ETSI to establish a downtown business working group and supported the Chamber's leadership in advancing this initiative. Childcare, community facilities and use of space. Council also addressed several items related to community use of space for childcare facilities. We approved an extended lease agreement with the Elk Valley Kids Club Society at Max Turk. Staff were also directed to prepare a lease amendment for the Fernie Child Care Society to expand into the vacated portion of that facility and to work to establish an outdoor play space for the children at Wild Wapiti Play School after the loss of their outdoor space. Grant and funding initiatives. Council authorised RDEK to submit a joint application with the City of Fernie to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for the Emergency Operations Centre and training. The Deputy Fire Chief provided us with an update that the grant has been approved. RDEK will receive and manage the funds of $320,000 and provide overall grant management for that project. In addition, council had a special meeting in May to discuss and allocate the City of Fernie's annual allocation of Ready Grant funding. Council distributed a total of $68,680.10 to our community not-for-profit associations. As council may recall, a new provincial funding program opened up in May to encourage the adoption of zero-emission vehicles in BC. Evolution Charge Inc. reached out to ask council to support the application to have EV chargers installed on a portion of the land at Fernie Skate Park. Council endorsed the application and supported developing a lease agreement with Evolution. The application has been submitted and the lease signed with a clause in the lease that states that if funding is not successful, the lease be terminated immediately. No further development have been received on this matter. Q2 council resolutions. To give you an overview of the areas in which the resolutions fall within in Q2, this slide shows all 25 resolutions, and I can share this around after the meeting. They are grouped into various categories. Those categories I have not mentioned yet in this presentation include recreation, planning, operations, financial reporting, which includes the annual municipal report, as the director touched on earlier, and advocacy. These are grouped and collated into subject matter. Finally, this slide is the status of Q2 council resolutions. The light orange bars represent completed items, decisions, or resolutions, while the dark orange bars indicate those items, actions still in progress. Of the 25 resolutions brought forward this quarter by council, 19 have been completed and 6, not 16, remain underway. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions, comments from council on both parts of the presentation? Is there more, Ms. Jansen, or is that the end?
This is the last slide, and I was just going to touch
No, it's okay.
on that there is an appendices within the report. A set of operational metrics are included, and it's a look at each functional area of the organization. Again, that's a bit of a work in progress. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions, comments from council? I have a couple. And I apologize, that's a lot of data and I'm not sure where I saw it. But a point of concern, cloud permit implementation and launch, resource constraints / priorities for the permit module. Like, what's the holdup there? Because we've had a lot of conversation around this table about building permits and this move to an online solution, so.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the building permit module has already launched and it's underway and actively being used. We kicked off the permitting module early August here with our team and with the vendor, which that's going well thus far, but competing priorities around the OCP are significant, and the continued pressures from the development community are also of concern, as well as the loss of a staff member in the planning department that have not filled.
Thank you. Again, apologies because I can't recall where I found it, but I wanted to ask the question, and perhaps you're not in a position to answer this, Director. Are we going to get that sand shelter this year? Because there was a comment, or there was a comment somewhere about the geotechnical work completed for the sand shelter. And do we know if it's going to be completed for this winter?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. I actually don't know. And unfortunately, Ms. Weir has departed, but I can follow up on that and get back to you on the status of that particular.
Would you mind? I am curious. And just an observation on the resolutions, the very complete spreadsheet. Going through that, many show as just being assigned, but it felt like a lot of them are already completed. Like, I don't know if that's an effort in going through and just cleaning them up, or whether that's an indication that there is still some outstanding item and therefore can't be completed until done.
I think it's just an indication, Your Worship, of just going through and, so I only went through Q2 only, and then double checked with the various departments on the status of those. But yeah, it's definitely just a cleanup
Okay.
exercise required for
I
that.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
Councillor Adi Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. I thought I had seen something about sand shelter. And it says winter sand and shelter design and construction in Q2 is green on track. And it has 10/31/25 as the target end date.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, what caught me up was the geotechnical investigation and whether that meant it was on track, but thank you for that. If it's on track, then I appreciate you finding that information. Yeah. Okay. Those were all my questions. Thank you, Director. Corporate Officer. The long delayed, much ballyhooed. 7.2, Q2 quarterly update from Bylaw Services. Officer Leach.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of the council. Thanks. Okay, so this is the second quarter from Bylaw Services. I have to put on my glasses here. So Bylaw Services saw a sharp rise in general inquiries in the second quarter, increasing from 32 to 72. So this growth highlights greater public engagement and stronger dependence on the department for regulatory information and guidance. Officers worked on being proactive by addressing individual property owners, providing education on bear attractants, along with pet licensing, and providing residents an opportunity to ask questions about bylaws. So both Officer Kramer and myself, we probably reached approximately 20% of the houses within the community, going from door to door, getting to know the residents, gives them, like I said, an opportunity to be able to ask questions. We like to kind of do that. We've found a lot of really interesting questions out there. So a lot of people don't typically put in requests for services or email us with the questions, so it provided them an opportunity. Next, for business licenses, the first quarter, we processed 22 new. There was 1,062 renewed business licenses. This does not include short-term rental properties. That's going to be in the next slide. And so now for the second quarter, 36 new have been processed and 55 have renewed. So total process for the second quarter was 91. So currently, well, at the end of quarter two, it was 1,175 business licenses. Okay, and now on to the short-term rental licenses, like I said, which were treated differently than the regular business licenses. So first quarter, we ended up with processing 239. Second quarter, we processed another 5. So at the end of the second quarter, we're at 244, and they just keep rising. So you're going to see in the third quarter, there's going to be another increase as well. Yep.
Sorry, Officer Leach. On that note, maybe look to our acting CAO. Like those 5 new wouldn't yet have paid under the new fee structure.
That is correct.
When does that actually come into effect?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan, right away.
Okay.
Yep. Or sorry, as soon as. Sorry,
We
it needs
yeah, we haven't
adoption, and then
adopted
right
it
away.
yet, yeah.
Yeah, it was given third readings and then.
Yes,
Immediately
yeah.
after adoption.
Do we know where that is in the calendar?
Next week.
Next week? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Councilor Eddie Kelly?
And we do have the tomorrow night about the bylaw business, the licensing fees.
Business licensing fees, which is a
Right.
separate issue,
Yeah.
although I'm sure some people will come
I
to
think we'll
discuss.
get feedback on.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Sorry, Officer,
No,
carry on.
thank you, Your Worship. Okay, moving forward to pet licenses. Officer Kramer and myself, when we were going door to door, we had recorded the residents that have dogs, educated them on pet licenses and what's expected and required to have a dog within the community. And so I'm happy to announce that by us going door to door and educating individuals and holding them accountable, essentially, it has increased our pet licenses to 105 as opposed to the previous year. So second quarter previous year, we weren't as many, so now we're up by 105. So it's working, which is what I like to see. And of course, I get to pet all the dogs, which is great. So, so in conclusion, then bylaw enforcement officers are dedicated to fostering a safe, respectful, and well-managed community through the consistent application of municipal bylaws and prompt response to service requests. The department remains focused on proactive enforcement and public education as key strategies to encourage compliance and uphold community standards. Is there any questions by His Worship or members of council?
Thank you, Officer Leach. Questions from council. Councilor Eddie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Officer Leach, I just wanted to ask about the pet licensing. So once you have your license and tag, then each year you just need to renew. Is the only option in person?
Currently, yes. So unfortunately, that does make it a little bit difficult and inconvenient for pet owners. So that's something that they do struggle with. And that was some of the feedback that we got from people is typically it's, I've been too busy, I forgot, things like that. We do have a square, where we can take payment, if we're there at the door and they want to make a payment then or purchase the license right then and there. They do have that option as well.
Further?
Can you refresh my memory? I seem to recall that one of our systems could have a module that would work for online. And are we still, the Pet Society also spoke to us. Do we know where that's at?
I believe we're going to be reviewing the DocuPet again. That should be coming forward again. I can't really comment too much on that at this point. Officer Kramer is kind of spearheading that one, and he's not here today. But I think that was something that we were definitely going to be bringing forward again as an option. So, one thing, and I know I had mentioned previously in meetings and stuff, is one thing that we struggle with is having the information when we're out in the field. So somebody saying that they have a dog license, for their dog. Well, number one, the license needs to be on the dog. And so it's a little bit difficult at the time to be able to identify whether or not the dog is actually in compliance. So we're still working on that, but it definitely helps. And one of the laws that are in the animal responsibility bylaw is to have your license on your dog at all times. So that's the key thing.
Director Jansen, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a quick point of clarity. Our existing pet licensing system does support online applications and payment. It simply hasn't been deployed. We have a pretty small team working on technology modernizations and right now been focused on financial services as well as our development, planning and development services. So that is available, as well as my colleague, the Director of Parks, Rec and Facilities, has been in communication with the Pet Society, working through their needs per their previous presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I asked the RCMP when they were here earlier about the plan, or, for monitoring e-bikes on our pathways. I'm curious if that is something that would fall under your work plan, or if that is something that we would rely on the RCMP to enforce.
Your worship to council. Thank you. That's a really great question. I'm very, pro going out there with the RCMP and assisting in doing enforcement regarding e-bikes, because we do have some concerns of them riding at high speeds on trails and stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have a bike. So perhaps in the future, when I do have a bike, I'm more than happy to go on patrols with the RCMP and do enforcement throughout the community as well.
Are you getting requests for service and complaints about e-bikes?
Yeah, and scooters. Actually, we're getting a lot of complaints about scooters in various areas through town. So I know that there's we'd like to do a kind of like a reward program as well, when people are at least, wearing their helmets and riding safely. So we like to encourage safe use, obviously, throughout the city, but there are some that like to push the limits. And we have had reports of e-bikes and scooters in the skateboard park after hours. So that does make it a bit difficult, because I did ask the operations department if they are out and about, to just ensure that those skateboard parks are being used just for skateboarders only. So.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
That's me. Thank you, Worship. I have a very persnickety thing that I was going to bring up, and I suspect this is just anachronistic, but I noticed in the bylaw descriptions on 77 that the description under dangerous dogs still refers to certain breeds of dogs. And I believe that we changed that definition of our bylaw.
That is correct. We are not breed specific.
So yes, so I'm assuming that that's an anachronism, that's just leftover language.
And I'm sorry, Councilman, where is that at?
Under the bylaw, animal control and dog licensing, under dangerous dogs. So
in the animal responsibility bylaw that's online?
But I don't know, it's in the report that you gave us under dangerous dogs. It says fail to leash, muzzle, or contain certain breeds of dogs. And I'm sure that that's an error.
Yes, sorry. It's not breed specific. It's dogs that are designated.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize for the confusion. Yes, we are definitely not breed specific. Some municipalities are. However, we are not. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I have to say that there's some e-bike issues in town here as well. And I've noticed some really poor behavior. Now, how do we get you an e-bike so that you can do some education on the trails? I know that I was looking into it a little bit today, and I know that Whistler has a micro mobility bylaw that is going to it's going to change rider behavior, hopefully. And that's what they have a bigger infrastructure than we do for that, but that would be really important. Education would be a really important factor. So how do we get you an e-bike?
I'm going to look over at the finance officer there.
I would, thank you, Councillor Nixon. I would suggest adding it to the vehicle replacement budget for the 2026 budget season.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
I think, Your Worship, that there are provincial regulations already. So it's not like we need to create additional laws. Like they exist for age and the type of bike that you can ride at a certain age and speed and all that. I mean, I've had people like blow by me like I'm standing still when I'm out on my bike. So, and I've had people contact me about concerns. I've also seen a fair bit on social media, people commenting about the speed. But as far as I know, there's actual provincial regulations.
Staff Sergeant, did you want to comment?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to, we have had discussions with the mayor, his worship, and Mr. Bornowski about this issue, and just trying to bring in the e-bikes into that, and just how we could benefit from that too as well by working with Robin directly with that. So that would be something we'd be able to do, like which in the area of our fiscal responsibility, be able to have a single member on the bike as opposed to that, and so be able to work with her more closely. That's the point I wanted to make. But yes, there is legislation regarding that. Sorry.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Councillor Schussman.
I mean, I'm sure I should be tut-tutting, but all I can think is how much fun a scooter would be at the skate park after hours. Not condoning, but.
This
I don't recommend it.
This from the guy who runs a demolition derby. Thank you, Councillor. Seeing nothing else, thank you so much, Officer Leach. Appreciate the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, members of council.
Item 7.3, report from our Acting Director of Corporate Services on the Accessibility Committee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report is just to provide an update on the Elk Valley Accessibility Committee's activities following the endorsement of the plan that occurred on May 20th. Progress to date includes city staff here in Fernie provided 2 accessibility booths at the senior center accompanying the finance team, who had also provided in-person property tax payment options. And at Canada Day, the committee also hosted a booth in Fernie just to promote awareness and create community awareness and education that there is a committee and a plan now to help build more inclusive communities. And we also held a collaborative meeting as a committee along with city staff from all 3 municipalities to discuss accessible recreation and how we could maybe better improve our information and websites to inform people in advance of visiting, say, the pool or the curling rink. Further notable updates is moving forward, our meetings will be held publicly over Zoom. So our next meeting will be Monday, September 15th at 5:30 over Zoom, and all 3 municipalities will be having public notice with the Zoom meeting and opening and encouraging all members of the public to join, participate, just observe, and help build our awareness on how we're building a more inclusive community. Further, we'll be providing quarterly updates, and we may be rolling this into the entire quarterly update as well for the following year for here in Fernie. And then each municipality has identified different focus areas. Fernie, we are looking at updating the Aquatic Center and Recreation websites with the accessible information. We are completing research into the Vulnerable Persons Registry as Sparwood has, and just trying to provide more visibility within the community to promote our public awareness. That was just a verbal update that I had this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Acting Director Neal. Questions from council? Just for those listening at home, can you quickly summarize what a vulnerable persons registry is?
So I did connect with Sparwood, and essentially it's a spreadsheet where people can voluntarily register on that. So in the event of an emergency or an evacuation, the municipality does maintain an updated contact sheet and ensures that they are accounted for in emergency operation response.
Well, thank you. I think that's an excellent initiative. So thank you. Anything else from council? Thank you, Acting Director. Very much appreciated. I'm wondering, because God forbid we should need it, whether we ask for a resolution to go past 10 o'clock. Moved by Councillor Hamilton. Seconded by Councillor Nixon. Only if we need it. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Audie Kelly was opposed. Item 7.4, the Q2 quarterly finance update, a report from our Director of Finance.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Hello again, Council. Just a few slides to accompany the content in your report.
I'm sorry, Mr. Burdett. Deb, can you, I don't know if it's that microphone or that speaker, but there's a lot of feedback over here. Oh, just turn it away. Yeah, maybe that might do the trick. Thank you.
Is that better? Test?
Better. Thank you.
Okay, just a few slides to accompany the content in your report. These next two slides have become pretty standard for these updates. The idea here is that I'm going to show you our 5 major expense categories that make up about 70% of our annual expenditures. And in an attempt to show you which way these have been trending in the last 24 months, ending June 2025. So starting with insurance, this went up 12.3% in 2024, and in 2025 it increased by 7%. Insurance increases, 7% is still higher than we would like, but the percentages are getting smaller. For reference, a couple of years ago, it was upwards of 30%, I believe. So 7% is a lot lower than that. Fuel is dropping mainly because price of fuel on average is lower than it was 1 and 2 years ago. But there's also a small amount there that you can attribute to our increasing EV fleet as well, which is positive. Utilities went down in 2024 and a little bit more in 2025. The reason for the 2024 decrease, if council remember, is largely because the switch to LED streetlights was just before the start of that 24-month period. Also, natural gas prices dropped in that period. And then the reason for this year's decrease is mainly the removal of carbon tax since the federal election and still a lower price yet. Wages and overtime, fairly flat increases year over year, as most of this is tied to our pre-existing contractual agreements. Percentage has remained steady since we've been doing these updates. Benefits also increased a little bit, but again, like insurance, they are getting a bit flatter.
Sorry, Mr. Burdett. In the report, it talks about OT being aligned with budget. I was just curious, is the increased time we've allotted for our billing officials, is that captured in Q2 or will that be Q3?
In overtime,
Yeah.
I believe most of that kind of began in late June, early July. And it's worth noting that there was an absence in that department that's covering most of those increased costs. But yeah, I think so. I think over time you will see start to increase in Q3 for sure.
Thank you.
Because of that.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Yeah, just to clarify, I believe we're down, probably Director Lennox can help us with that, but are we not down over 1 FTE in that department still?
Director Lennox, can you comment?
Yeah, that's correct. Planner 2, and then one of the casual building officials recently retired, so that makes it a little more than 1. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Which we have recently rehired, as you know, but just recently as well. The 2 casuals.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was in Q3 as well. As I was saying, benefits also decreasing that percentage. That was upwards of 15% a couple of years ago. So that's good for us. And then I would just at this point again confirm that there's no surprise unbudgeted expenditures or anomalous items to bring to.
That's a great slide.
bring to
I'm-
council's attention. With respect to the recent trends, in my opinion, they're encouraging, just in terms of items continuing to flatten despite the initial scare there about tariffs and whatnot. So no very large increases like we saw in the early years of COVID. Happy to answer questions or receive any feedback. Thank you.
Questions, comments from council? Not for me. I very much appreciate the report as always. And just your last comment, seeing headlines lately about how the Canadian economy is proving far more resilient than expected in the wake of tariff uncertainty. That's a very good thing. Thank you, Mr. Purdue.
Thank you.
Item 8.1, correspondence. Any comments? Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor McIsaac.
I did actually have a question for staff about this correspondence, and recognizing that our primary water source is considered a surface water source. Curious what our vulnerability is to wildfire or anything like that up that draw there.
I don't know if anyone present is in a position to comment.
I don't think I have a great answer for you. I also just asked Deputy Chief Robinson if he had any thoughts, and he has none to offer at this point either. Sorry.
And what would it take to determine that vulnerability? Would it be some sort of survey of the slopes immediately adjacent to the or above our water source? I'm just curious.
We do have a community wildfire protection plan that may cover that area, which I can follow up with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Without knowing what the specifics are for our particular risk case, the idea of having these mobile water facilities for areas that have been affected by wildfire, water is not optional. I think we should support this particular initiative. It may not be us that directly benefits from it today, but certainly someone will in the province, and it might be us someday.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I thought it was actually a pretty well-reasoned initiative. Councillor Shoesmith.
My only issue with this is that it's specifically and only for wildfire-related water contamination, not landslides, not anything else. Although, maybe it's quibbling, but I would be a lot happier with this motion if it were for more broad disasters.
Councillor McIsaac.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Councillor Shoesmith. I guess the one thing I don't know is, do we already have these types of facilities for other types of natural disasters? That may be the case. If we don't, having these types of portable safe water things, I can't imagine why they wouldn't be used in the event of a landslide where a water supply has been cut off, whatever. Certainly they won't be available if we don't have them.
Yeah.
So, so while I don't disagree with a broader potential usage on it, I think supporting this particular initiative as it is, merely attaching our name and saying, yes, we think it's a good idea, is a good first step.
Yeah, and I wonder if we were to do that and include it, it would be our recommendation, and likely would be from the floor at UBCM, that this be broadened to include disaster-related water security. Councillor Nixon?
Yeah, I was just going to, thank you, Worship. I was just going to say the same thing. It would be a friendly amendment, and I'm sure that the many members that are on the floor would be willing to make that as well, make that amendment. And to answer Councillor Hamilton's question about the wildfire interface, because our Fairy Creek is a combination of surface and spring, I would say that we would be switching down to James White. And because it's turbidity at the same time, right? So we would go down to James White after that during the wildfire.
Potentially. Yeah. Councillor Shoesmith, did you have a follow-up?
Not particularly. I like the friendly amendment idea.
Councillor Hamilton.
Excuse me. The wording in the letter says these units will be held in reserve and deployed as needed to communities experience significant water contamination following a wildfire or other disasters. So I don't know if we necessarily need to worry.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was actually scanning it, trying to reread it, whether it captured that. So to look to our corporate officer, do we require a resolution to support this?
I believe so, because the letter states it at the end.
Okay,
Move to support.
Okay, move to support. There we go.
seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. With that, look at that. We didn't need that resolution after all.
Nice.
We will adjourn the committee of the whole at 9:51 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and thank